We are live.
We are live.
What is this?
This is a test of imploding this trailer. Yes. Yes.
The pressure gauge is going up to, would that be 10 pounds?
Yeah. Oh, I gotta get this bar off.
On top of the tank trailer is a vacuum gauge. That's showing negative pressure.
I don't know why that. I guess that bar doesn't want to go away. There it goes.
Negative pressure.
It's about to get exciting.
Oh, dude. This is frightening. Welcome to America Heals, everybody. We start out with science. Oh. Okay. I'm talking right over it.
It replays a couple different angles, so you'll get it again if you want it. It replays a couple different angles, so we're gonna get the Inception thing. My phone volume was up.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes, for anyone who brews beer when you're cooling a tank, you want to make sure you have your pressure and valves open, and because that's what will happen. It will go.
Well, yeah, especially if you're
like that.
Especially if you're using steam.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the interior facing rear. This is probably the best angle.
It becomes an intestine.
And then here's from the rear facing forward. This is so you can watch the guy.
Look at all the engineers. They're stoked.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
That was really maybe, it's so gratifying or satisfying or whatever it is. Hello, Redneck Economics. Redneck Economics. That's a great name.
Oh yeah, they were on YouTube last time. Yep, that's where they are.
Jeff, I'm having a little bit of my bourbon tonight out of something that came in the mail. I'm not using my America Heals glass today. I don't know if you can read what that says.
It looks a bit like the U.S. Capitol. Let's see here.
It is the U.S.
Inauguration, Capitol. Biden, nice. I'm drinking actual coffee out of our coffee cups. That's how tired I am right now.
Thank you, Zach. And it was just a throw out. I thought maybe if you wanted to, that's fine. If not, no biggie, brother. It is all good. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm good.
How are things in Wichita, man?
Good. It was a nice day. I got up to like 68 degrees or something. A little windy, but clear and nice. We went to my in-laws' house for a nephew's birthday.
Nice.
Turning 16, so that was a good time. Pretty much everybody's vaccinated now, so we don't have to wear masks around each other, which is kind of nice.
Isn't that something?
My 16-year-old nephew is going to go get his vaccine because he has gotten a job at the local stadium where, because he's interacting with the public, he qualifies. So he'll be the youngest member of our family to get vaccinated. And
congratulations. That is, as an American family, congratulations in your armor, the defense armor for your people, that you've led your family in that way and been a great example. So not just for you, but for everybody who's watching. That's what we need to be saying to each other,
and I think we let some people off the hook too. People talk about, if I don't want to get vaccinated, if I get sick, blah, blah, blah. Well, the problem is, what are the odds that you get sick without passing it on to somebody else? So you're part of the problem. If you get COVID, now it can be an accident. I mean, I'm not trying to belittle people, but if you don't take it seriously and you get COVID and you pass it to the next person, I mean, you're a link in a chain that's going to end with somebody dying. So, it was more important than just you not getting sick to avoid COVID. It was important to not transmit it, add to the stats, hurt people. But
it fits with a greater posture, just a larger posture too, of not being part of the team of the country, of being part of just choosing divisiveness when we are so close. And the answer is simple: to just get the vaccine. It's paid for. It's done. They don't check your health insurance at all. That's not true.
No.
I went through that and I tried, and they were like, "We don't even need to." And I went to my own place, and so
I went through the county. But yeah, they don't check anything. They don't care who you. They don't really honestly care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They want you to get it everywhere you go. They want you to get it.
There was some consent form. That's basically it. That's all they really want. And I think ID. I think they ID you, right, to make sure you're not getting it twice or you're not whatever from. I would assume the main thing they're looking for is that you're actually from the area that they're giving shots to, so you're not driving states away and shuffling up vaccines or something. Anyway, yeah, it's very straightforward.
And I've heard people talking different places about, well, we're going to cross state lines to get it, and that seems extreme, but I don't know. Wherever that happens, I'm sure
do what you gotta do,
doing what they can to get it in their arm and get on with life. And then so that's another piece, Jeff, I was saying earlier, and it's funny that Zach sends a picture of the sunset because we're one of the shows that's out there that has a scheduled time that sometimes does get affected by the weather. I had 10 minutes to go tonight. I had to put my tools away before it snowed. So sorry for the delay, but that's what's going on. And
I believe, Kel, they only asked for my ID at my second one. And I don't know if that's to like make sure they're closing the loop, that they've got the same person, or if that was just, I don't know. I don't know if that was just it seemed like they only asked for my ID at the second one, but that may also just be them getting their procedure straight. I mean, this is all pretty new for everybody.
So
Kel was saying she didn't have to show ID.
A question I want to throw out as a foundation to tonight is, and this is for everybody who's watching, because I'm curious about this because, as a lot of you know, I'm a pastor at a church in Denver, and this has been a weekend where I'm starting to see a new shift happen. And it's not just with church people, it's with all the people I'm encountering, where it seems to be like there are folks who have been hunkered down for this whole time. And maybe they've got their vaccine or they're about to get it, or they're, looking at their calendar about what's to come up. And, maybe even they hear Joe Biden say July 4th is going to be a party, but we have a lot of work to do before we get there. It feels like everybody's light is starting to blink again, and people are like, man, I'm about to crawl out of this hole. I'm not quite there yet, but hope is beginning to happen. And
yes,
I also think, and this has just been my day a little bit, but I'm noticing that there's also this is a psychological question or thought, a new little hangnail of reticence to not believing that we can make plans. That's maybe a new level of that in our discourse to maybe watch. So I'm just curious if anybody else is feeling that way. If you've just been rocking and rolling and running to Florida and running around naked the whole time, that's great, but not really. But for those of us who've been adults and trying to get through this, leading families, leading groups, companies, whatever, we had some decisions to make. When and how do we get out of this thing? Has that happened to you at all, Jeff?
Yeah, you may know I'm an officer in an organization, and then I'm also in a band that I host, which makes me kind of the executive officer of that endeavor. And it's tough. I mean, for the organization, which has 40 members of my specific lodge, it's like I was talking it out with some of the other members, and we haven't met since basically March when we were meeting in a retirement. We were meeting in a retirement home, and they closed to all visitors, so we were locked out. So that was easy when we went dark. But now that we want to maybe meet again, one of the things I was saying was, well, once everyone can get the vaccine, we wait 6 weeks, which would be, first shot 4 weeks, second shot 2 weeks. Everyone then could be immune. And if they choose not to go get the shot, that's up to them. And one of the members got all defensive that we can't, to make a new membership mandate. We can't make requirements on members. I was like, I'm not making any requirements. I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm basically saying, if we wait long enough that everyone could be immunized, if someone chooses not to be and they get sick, that was their choice. We couldn't force them to do it. So, that to me,
when are we going to make that?
Right.
Yeah. What's the TikTok on that?
Right. And, this is a very large, the world's oldest and largest fraternity. Someone can Google that, but I can't make membership rules. It's not my place to make membership rules. So, and I'm not going to, but the question just starts to become like, when should we, when shouldn't we? So I think the pressure's starting to come on. Like right now, they're only meeting in one specific place that has basically no rules. So that doesn't really make my stomach feel good. When they're meeting in sort of a back alley, it tells me, places that host people don't want us meeting. Maybe we shouldn't be meeting. But anyway, it's right around the corner. Yeah. When's my band going to play again? One of my members is getting his first shot tomorrow, but the other one's a barber. I don't know when he's going to start getting shots. And then if we do have band nights, we used to let the kids come and hang out together. Well, do we do that? Do we just let the adults who are immunized come over? So there's just a lot of head scratching on how to do this, because the last thing we want to do is, collapse at the finish line. We're almost there. There's no point in opening up just, we've gone a whole year. Why trip at the finish line? For example, they want my daughter to come in and take a standardized test here in April 22nd. And I'm kind of scratching my head, like, she's been home for almost an entire school year. Why go back a month before the end of school just to shuffle all the kids together before we have 3 months off, and this thing will probably be dead by the time fall comes around? I can't really figure out why I would send her back. So it's definitely an interesting time. And as we know, Nate, well, I probably shouldn't say his name. I guess I just did, but we have a friend who's recovering right now who just got it like last week. So it's still out there. It's you can look at your state stats. I mean, most states are coming way down. Kansas is actually the 4th best in the country right now, which is great as far as new case rate. So
one piece that I've been warned about from some people that I respect is, and they've come from people who deal with CDC.
Yeah.
Coming down is the wrong phrase. We need to go back to the fear factor that we were at when it came on, and then take a look from that position of where we are, and then look at the variance, because it is coming down. And so if we focus on the coming down number, that's important, but it really is a false sense of security. We need to go back to the holy shit number. We're at 300 a day in our state.
Right. And when I say Kansas is down, I mean Kansas is down to pre-first wave numbers. Like, we're down at like lockdown numbers. So
there you go.
I mean, we are down. Yeah, it's not just this big hill and we started down. I mean, we're coming back down. We're looking for a place to land. I mean, we really are coming down. But yes, even when the problem was, of course, we locked down as the first wave came up, and when we came out of lockdown, it was much more likely you'd run into it in your community. Whereas now, it's gone all the way up, done a big second hump, and now it's dropping off. And so, it's all a matter of it really just, most importantly, people just can't. It's the wrong time to just be done with it and stop cold. You should still be wearing your mask. You should still be washing your hands, even if you've been vaccinated. It's just a good idea to take it seriously. Again, the reference I've used all the time is like you have a rabbit infestation in your backyard. The way we were handling it was each state represents a yard, and one state would go out and shoot as many rabbits as they could one day, and then just go back inside and lock the door. Right. And then, so the rabbits were just, you come back out 2 weeks later and I got my yards covered in rabbits again. It's like, well, why couldn't we all work together and make a plan and constant attention and focus and be ready for it, and so now is not the time to, again, just like, okay, well, it's done, and shut the door. We need to keep focused on it until it actually gets down to really low numbers, especially when they have these variants and things. I mean, it's no time to be taking off your restrictions just brashly like Texas did. I mean, that was just way too early. Texas just fumbled, and they'll see a surge in cases, and truthfully, people will die because of it. And all we were asking for was masks. I mean, it really depresses me how little certain people were willing to give for the common good. I mean, holy mackerel, just wear a mask. And they acted like it was, carry a cross.
Well, public health has found that it has an enemy. Just people's approach to learning is making it difficult for public health, which was, walk this way into the arrows into the bathroom, and then here's how to use the bathroom, like simple signs, right? We used to communicate with public health all the time based on assumptions.
Yeah.
But now, the way the QAnon mind works, it's as if they go into a public bathroom and they imagine that they're going to break the pipes because that's something they could do,
Right.
Normal behavior, normative critical thinking of just having a society is something that they've chosen not to be part of. And I know I'm being hyperbolic about it, but the mask was so simple.
Yeah.
If the goal was understood to be like, hey, let's get done with this thing, man. Like, we're still 3 months away from kicking its ass by masks alone.
Yeah.
Remember that was always an option to do 90 days of just mask up and full tilt.
Yeah. We're 2.5 times the people in second place with deaths. We could have been done with this in May if everyone would have just taken it seriously, but they refused.
That would have been free. That would have been so cheap.
Yeah, they refused. We went on lockdowns. We came out of lockdowns early. I mean, we could go through it all, but it's just exhausting. And unfortunately, we never had a top-down approach. We had every man for themselves, figure it out for yourself. And that's why we have the whole spectrum from people that are terrified to people that are convinced it's a lie. It's just, we did it all wrong.
We did.
Totally wrong. I mean, most of us responded correctly, but as a country,
because we each had to. We had to develop our own CPU of governance and of which weather to listen to, which scientist to listen to, which person not to listen to,
right?
Which one of my current personal relationships am I going to have to change now because they're listening to something that I'm not. Everybody had to go through so much of that.
It was exhausting and tragic, really. And again, all we really needed was people to just do the littlest thing to help. I mean, you know what I mean? Just the littlest thing to help. And they refused. And they were proud about it. They wore "Don't Tread on Me" t-shirts while they didn't wear masks. You know, it's just exhausting. Proud of their ignorance, excited about their ignorance. This is so bad.
So as you come back out of your hole, as I come back out of my hole,
yeah,
which, you know, for lack of a better term, it's not like I've been living in a hole, but it just feels like it over this year. Yeah. Even if you go drive around and try to do something, there's nothing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was actually funny. I went down to my bar district this weekend, Saturday afternoon, kind of got my kids into playing Pokemon Go a little bit, just something good to do outside. So we went down and the bar district was like pretty busy, like not pre-COVID busy, but like one bar has a huge outdoor patio and it was pretty full. You know, of course, nobody with the mask because they're all sitting there drinking. I mean, I get the rules. I'm not freaking out, but there were a lot of people, you know, a lot of people coming and going from restaurants and stuff. And
where are you at on that, man? Is that you? Are you out there just partying and going out and eating at restaurants 3 nights a week?
No restaurants yet.
How come? I'm with you too. I'm just playing the game, but like, where's the line? You know, that's where I'm thinking about tonight.
Well, I mean, obviously everyone has to draw their line. You know, It's easy enough. It's easy enough to do Grubhub or DoorDash and pay a driver, help the gig economy, help the restaurant, and be safe in our house and not worry about what idiots at the next table. You know, where was he yesterday, and who is he hanging out with, and is he pumping COVID into the air? And just why I'd rather just Grubhub and support a business, let them do the delivery model and get their money. And you know, it just serves everybody right now. I'm not going to go into a crowded room. I'm just not. You know, the closest we've been, I think, is my daughter's haircut. Mm-hmm. You know, we went into a place and, you know, the stylist was wearing a mask and she was relatively close to Violet, my daughter, but, you know, she was wearing a mask and my daughter was wearing a mask, and you just kind of figure, well, you know, at some point you have to get a haircut, you know.
And masks work.
They work.
That's the other piece. A year ago going in, we didn't really know how seriously great masks can be in taking care of this thing. And if they're worn right.
Well, there have been proven examples, right? Wasn't there a barber somewhere that got COVID and they'd been wearing a mask when they cut people's hair and like none of their patients got sick. So we all know how close a barber is to their patients. I mean, their customers. That's really, really close. So, I mean, obviously, I don't know. Again, it's a killer. It's a killer.
I'm going to ask myself this. Am I going to wait to go back to the restaurants until the government tells me it's safe? And when is that point? Is that Jared Polis, my governor, or is that the president? Joe Biden seems to be taking the mantle of that with the speeches he's been giving us a unified, consistent message that says everything that he means and means everything that he says and backs it up with science. I'm more apt to say I'm going to wait till July 4th right now and just pace my gear in life and planning. And that's what I was asked to do.
I mean, a key question is, you know, is somebody vaccinated? If you're vaccinated, that obviously dramatically reduces your chances of catching it and therefore giving it. Because again, staying out of the chain is really my number one concern. I mean, everyone can be cavalier about their own life, but if I spread it to someone else, you know, I start to become responsible for these other people's lives. So being vaccinated should reduce both things from happening. I guess I really don't know. Like I say, I'm really just starting with when can, hey, Ace just came in. I'm just trying to kind of figure out when can I, you know, go back to my fraternity meetings and jam nights, you know, at this point, sort of thinking small. And I think I would do that before probably bars and restaurants because my bandmates I can monitor and make sure they're vaccinated and are unlikely to be carrying it to me or catching it from me. So, you know, Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. It's a good time to be thinking about it. I guess I would say I wouldn't be scared to go to a restaurant if it had lowered capacity, every other table kind of stuff. I think we're probably about there if you're vaccinated. But I'm not in a hurry to like go sit in a movie theater with other people. Forget that, you know what I mean? Like side by side with strangers. And truthfully, I think a lot of things are going to change. I could be wrong, but I don't know that we'll ever go back to some of those models. I don't know.
Yeah.
Movie theaters, I think we're already in trouble. And I don't know. I just kind of think this might be the end of it. If not only can I be at home and pause and make my own snacks and everything else, but I can avoid catching contagious diseases. I don't know. I think, something like going to a movie, I don't know. I think that, and not to mention while we were doing this direct to home, so how many movies were released direct to home. So you didn't have to go to the movie theater to see the newest release.
I miss the popcorn.
Yeah, you can make the popcorn. It's not that hard.
I know. It's not quite the same.
There's cool silicone popcorn poppers you can use in the microwave. And then the trick is you just melt like a quarter cup of butter and pour it over the top. That's the only trick from.
That's what makes it so good. And
I realize more and more what a lot of restaurants
poison chemical stuff that they add to it that makes it even better.
Well, it's palm oil technically. It's not butter, so it's more buttery than butter. And there's probably a fair bit of MSG in it too. What you probably need to do is buy some MSG, which is called Accent in the grocery store. Get you some Accent, melt some butter. But the trick I'm starting to realize too is like the reason we all like movie popcorn is because we've never stopped to do the math. That's probably one of the highest calorie snacks we eat all year.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time.
By the time you're driving home from a movie, dude, it's pouring out. It's coming out of your face.
Yeah.
You know that feeling when you're like, Jesus, man, I'm greasy.
Greasy.
Too much corn.
Personally, I don't like it very buttery. I like just whatever. I think I like it just more because coming out of the machine, it's being popped in palm oil too and salted.
Yeah, I don't usually add the butter.
It comes out of the machine amazing, but yeah, then if you add the butter, that's starting to really kick it up a notch. But you're right, yeah, dry. It's still you can kind of feel it. Somehow it all seems to come out of my temples. I feel like I don't know if it's because I brushed my hand against my forehead or if it's just imagination. Part of my T-zone for oily skin. I don't know.
It's like touching wet canvas. When you touch it, it starts to seep out.
Right.
Part of it.
Yeah. It feels like it.
Now, man, we were talking about this. I'm dealing with this all the time right now in a little church sanctuary in Denver, and we can't open yet because, I was out the other day and people are not social distancing. It's sunny. They're running around doing anything they want to, which is their choice, and it's the city. And so if we open up on a Sunday morning, because I am in the heart of it, okay?
Yeah.
If we open up on Sunday morning, in comes the city. It's not just my little congregation at that point. Every Sunday that property transforms because it's a church on Sunday. People come in, they sit in the courtyard. It's just a busy place.
That sounds lovely, by the way.
It's amazing. But we've had to turn it off because in order to turn it on, it's got old bathrooms. The ventilation is shit. We've never had to put any money into these sort of things before. And we haven't looked at any of them since we shut down. And so now I'm looking at that building and I'm like, oh my God, we may never be back in there. We may need to and this has been my thinking for the last couple of weeks. I'm like, because we don't have an alternative place, we may have to start partnering with some other churches that have a nice outdoor space that we can start meeting sooner in your little square for your family over here, and then because there are places that do it that are closer but not in the city like that. So
Boulder probably has several.
Boulder's got them, but I'm down in Denver. I live up here, but I'm in Denver.
But even Denver's got to have several small public amphitheaters, doesn't it?
But the city's going. People are in the amphitheaters. We were like, we could go to the park. And we got over to the park and we're like, oh shit, everybody's at the park 2 feet away. Like it's crazy, happy, sunshine.
Yeah. There's an amphitheater behind my old grade school that's like down a hill. It's like an outdoor classroom kind of space. There might be a way to use a public school space or something. You might just crash it. I doubt
we actually talked to we might do that too, just to do it. But we're having to go to that conversation. That's why I'm bringing this up.
Yeah. High school.
We're in a place where we're like, okay, our inside, our bathrooms, whole thing, we have not prepared for that conversation. We had to close a year ago, and it took 6 months to get everybody to realize why we were closing and changing the behavior and going online and learning all that shit. And then in August, we're told by our bishop, who's connected with the CDC updates, and they were like, back in August, they were like, guys, it's going to be a year from August. You remember that, Jeff? When they told us that, they were like, it's going to be a fucking year. Okay.
Yeah.
So then,
Ace, we talked about the numbers going down. It's not about going down. It's about getting down to where, probably like you're talking about, if the death rate gets down to what would be similar to flu, then yeah, you're back to a situation of like, okay, well, I don't live inside in fear of the flu, and I'm vaccinated against the flu. So that's kind of what we talked about a minute ago, Ace. That's a good point. But yeah, I would think like a high school football stadium would be perfect for you guys to spread out. They got bathrooms, all that.
Well, I guess where I'm going with this is a lot of places are going to have to start back up planning. Oh shit, we just closed. we have new issues, and I think that's what they've been going through with some of the schools and the retrofitting and money that's had to go into those. But there's a lot of other businesses and churches and groups and people that have used buildings, and maybe in a small town there's like only one city hall or fellowship hall the whole town rents for every wedding.
Right.
There are going to be conversations that are going to occur from now on about space, use, public health, and I'm just lifting this up. This is what I'm starting to look at. And,
yeah, I agree.
That's what's coming. And then that pairs with something that I'm hoping we see soon. I can't wait until I see a breaking news headline that says, or you see one in Wichita that says, we have 0 cases in Wichita.
Yeah.
Because when that happens, then we're going to start having different conversations about how do we keep it this way? And testing and tracing and making sure.
Right. How are you going to test 100 people a day if no one thinks they have it? That's the kind of problem you want to have. How do you do random testing to confirm you're still at 0? That's then we've made it. Because you do that for 3 months and you do random testing and you still have had 0 cases. Now you're talking eradication, and I guess I would be very surprised if we get to that point anytime soon. I think what Ace is talking about of being back to the flu model as far as numbers, I think that's when almost everywhere is going to just drop it.
Yeah.
I mean, at least for the average person, there'll always be some of us focused on it, but I would guess when we get down to flu numbers, they'll just drop it. Because I mean, flu kills people all the time. My wife treats people that die of flu,
You need 5% plus up testing.
5% plus up testing. I don't know what that means exactly. But yeah, it'd be great to that's the kind of conversation that's really amazing. Yeah, when some city says we have no confirmed cases right now, not even in the hospitals, like people have either recovered or died, we have no new cases. That would be amazing.
And then they're going to be like, stay out.
Yeah, we just closed our town.
I mean, those are another layer of these conversations. So just thinking about where we are as spring has sprung, it feels like there's some new stuff in the air. And,
I agree.
Opportunity seems to be abounding. And so as that occurs, it's like, how much do I believe I can do? I'd love to be doing more and all that kind of stuff. Just chomping at the bit, thinking about that.
Well, and the millions of people that have gotten their first shots and the millions of people that have gotten both shots. I mean, between the people that didn't care and got sick and the people that have been immunized, I think we covered this last show. There's a bigger buffer than there's ever been of people that shouldn't be carriers. So, we're heading in the right direction for a couple of reasons, and that's good. My wife said that cold snap we got to the Midwest, as I said the other day, truncated it a fair bit because everyone was locked inside for a week and a half, 2 weeks because it was so damn cold. Except, unfortunately, say Texas, where people had to go to like shelters because they were frozen out of their house. So, yeah, I mean, I think things are definitely heading in the right direction. But we're definitely seeing, this Miami Beach stuff and all that stuff. It's just there's just way too much people that have just dropped their guard completely, and it's just entirely too early for that. But luckily, Miami Beach is a long way.
We've seen it before. Yeah, we've seen it before. We've seen that go. Vaccines, cards, give people full access, no masks, fly, open it up. Yeah, I think that's what's coming. It's just a matter of when people are going to make those decisions, and then these organizational things by groups. And I mean,
the anti-maskers.
Your group is going to have to decide on behavior changes if they can't use their building and facility. And I think every group in America is having to face that. The schools have faced it already.
Right.
And got the luxury of having kids that don't, disperse it so well. But there are a lot of bingo halls and, old buildings in this country. And so I wonder about, and I brought that up in the Build Back Better, which is the title for tonight. But I really think that that's going to be part of the import of looking at an infrastructure plan soon, is that we're going to run in, this country's full of old buildings. And we already knew that. And we already knew that we needed windows and solar and updates with HVAC and different things. I'm already seeing in Denver, when you go around, there are restaurants that are already starting to advertise their airflow capacity.
Interesting.
There are breweries that are still open that have, 3 sides of the building has the garage doors that roll in and up. They just leave them open all the time. And then when it's cold, they just pull the heaters inside or right next to the door. And then it's Colorado. Put your coat on. You'll be all right. Drink more beer.
Right.
So,
yeah, it'll be interesting if they make vaccine cards required to do things. These pro-COVID Republicans are going to have a real hard time. That suddenly your access is actually being restricted because you have not taken the steps to be safe. Just imagine a world where there's vaccine card required flights and not vaccine required flights, and the not vaccine required flights require masks.
I gotta wonder if this is a generational response though, because I talked to my kids, 25 all the way to 16, and their first reaction was, dude, I want it so I can go. And I wasn't like, what about Big Brother? And they're like, I want people to know I have the vaccine.
Yeah, I don't care who knows I have the vaccine.
And and I tried to make the case. Well, don't you think that it's bad the government knows your shit? And they were like, who cares? They already know my shit. And they were they were on with the next thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's our Gen X and baby boomer, old school, dude, they're going to know. You can remember that there's a Patriot Act and that they do. Just
correct.
Relax.
Yeah, and watch The Social Dilemma, where they tell you that they're actively targeting you individually.
Because that's how marketing is done. They call that micro-targeting.
Yep.
We've heard about it for years. We heard about how Ted Cruz had some of the best micro-targeters working for him back in his last election. A lot of those guys ended up working for Donald Trump in the next election.
No, I don't know. I mean, I watched The Social Dilemma last week. I don't know. I don't know that they are quite down to the level they pretend in that show. I mean, I do think there's algorithms that are targeting you. I don't think any one person nor program is like, okay, Jeff wants X, Y, Z. It's more of a code kicking out spam, but it's still pretty freaky. I mean, honestly, the schools require vaccines now. So the question is, when would the COVID vaccine be required for school? Because I believe almost every state that allowed people not to vaccinate at schools has reversed that lately. Have you guys seen the picture of Ted Cruz and Grandpa Munster? Have you seen this side by side? I can find it.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Birdman, you bring it every time. Thank you.
Cheers. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Birdman. I had a little bourbon this afternoon just to take the edge off, but I sobered back up for the show.
Oh, I just had a poured in my glass as we began. It's got the Biden-Harris. Can you? Oh, you can't see that there, can you? Biden-Harris inauguration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Harris. Amazing. They're doing such a great job.
They are.
It is fancy. And you know what? It's like when your team wins the World Series, there's that one or NFL championship or NBA championship. After every single one of them, there's that first commercial after the championship game, after the very end of the game. And it's always, do you want to remember this wonderful moment with a special sweater and a football or whatever it is, right? Yeah. And they only run it once. This was that right after the inauguration. And I knew I'd have to catch it. So
share my screen real quick so you can. This isn't even the best one. There's one that, I mean, they look like they're. There's one where they look like damn twins. I mean, there's one. I don't know if it was slightly modified or what, but there's one where they look like they're the same damn person.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
And the sincerity in the eyes is really one of the best parts.
You wonder inside his mind. I think inside his mind, he thinks he's just drop dead sexy. The way he carries himself, it's like a chess club geek that thinks he's a player. And historically, I wouldn't have picked on Ted Cruz so much, but he's just turned into a complete and total piece of shit in the last year.
That is from the Munsters, yes.
Yeah, that's Grandpa Munster. Yeah. And there's a side by side. I don't have the really good one. There's one where and then maybe it's modified because if you look, I mean, their head shape isn't exactly the same, and Grandpa Munster's nose is dramatically bigger, I would say. But there's ones that show them really close. They look a lot alike. Yeah, Munsters. That's the source of my favorite fake address. In college, you could fill out a credit card application for like a free T-shirt, and I would literally put down my name was like Mr. Bubbles, and I'd say I live at 1313 Mockingbird Lane, just because I had it on the top of my head all the time.
It was a great show.
Yeah,
it was
a good show. It was a good show. I think it was better than the Addams Family. The Addams Family was kind of heavy on the humor. I thought the Munsters were a little funnier, and Grandpa was probably the best guy on the show. He was hilarious.
Oh, for sure.
Grandpa Munster was
well-balanced show.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, spitting image is right.
Dude, I mean, Ted Cruz and then Ron Johnson. I mean, they're I guess it's fun to look at them as clowns because they're clowns. You won't be able to unsee that.
Yeah, I mean, Ron Johnson. Yeah, we played that last. Don't forget my good friend Chip Roy, with his rope and trees justice. I mean, it's just we live in a time that the hypocrisy of the Republican Party just couldn't be any stronger. It's just mind-boggling.
I got one for you, baby. Ready? I got to figure out how to do this shit. Hold on. I got to share.
Oh, have you never shared? Oh, yeah, you shared your own screen.
I have. I'm just dim.
It is tough with technology. It's like you hit the wrong toggle and your whole computer shuts down.
Well, I've got excellence on one end, and there we go.
Its ideas are not.
Hold on.
Here.
Oh,
this shit. This.
I didn't play it. I just read the clip of what it was.
How do I do this? Is this it?
You click the bar at the beginning. You're at 24 seconds. Right. So click the bar to the beginning. There you go.
Even if you're pro-abortion, your ideas are not welcome here, and they will be given no quarter. The same with Joe Biden. He's a Catholic. He's a member of the family. If for some reason he would be in Buckeye on a Sunday, Joe Biden is welcome to come to Mass here. His ideas are not welcome here. And if you ask me a follow-up question, would you give him communion? No. Over my dead body. Not until he repents. He's a public figure. He needs to publicly repent. And we need to pray for his conversion.
I'm going to leave that there because I'm going to say a couple things.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to play it again because there's sort of a big piece here. Last week, on a different story, religion story, the Vatican's magistrate, the Vatican announced that they were not going to bless same-sex unions. And they said it with language that was a specific language that they chose. They said that's because they were not going to bless same-sex unions because God does not bless sin.
Wow.
That was the doctrinal end game. That was the end. They've talked about it. The Pope has, for 2 years, said that he does support same-sex unions or blessing same-sex couples in his own persona, but that the magistrate has come down and said the Catholic Church says no. And it's because this theological statement, God does not bless sin. Now, I'm going to speak to this briefly in saying that in Christian doctrine, one of the core reasons why we celebrate Good Friday, the death of Jesus, is partly because of the concept that God is with humanity in all of life, the good and also all of the bad, even unto death, unto death buried, and then new life can come.
Right.
And so the very hope of the entire religion is that God loves us in our worst spots And the whole piece of the gospel is over and over again that God loves you when you're a sinner. Remember the woman at the well. There would have been no woman at the well without God loving this person in their state, not asking them to change first. It's a prerequisite of grace. It's the freedom of a gift. It's why there's an awe moment in the Christian theological moment.
Right.
So I'm lifting that up because that's a piece of language that they chose. And I think that the Vatican, and I'm a Lutheran pastor in the ELCA, and I will stand up anywhere somebody wants to have a chat about this. Please come on this show or anywhere. Grace is the whole thing. And so we start from there. We build faith. And so that's a foundational piece. Now we're going to invest into this Catholic priest who's in Buckeye, Arizona, obviously very comfortable in position, and he is pontificating a very similar theology, only he is aiming it on his own without the support of the global Catholic Church. He is supporting this on his own of an arrogant stance towards Joe Biden that I think you'll hear the similar thing if we listen to it again. So we're doing this one more time at least. Jeff, do you want to say anything before that? I'm sorry I took over, but I needed to.
No. I like everything you said.
Okay.
Even if you're pro-abortion,
which no one is,
your ideas are not welcome here, and they will be given no quarter. Same with Joe Biden. He's a Catholic. He's a member of the family. If for some reason he would be in Buckeye on a Sunday, Joe Biden is welcome to come to Mass here. His ideas are not welcome here. And if you ask me a follow-up question, would you give him communion? No. Over my dead body. Not until he repents. He's a public figure. He needs to publicly repent. And we need to pray for his conversion. Even if you're pro-abortion, but your ideas are not welcome here.
First of all, of course, I'd just like to step in for a split second and say no one's pro-abortion, so we can just stop there. But I guess I'm confused. Do Catholic priests normally judge their members of their congregation? I mean, do they withhold communion regularly? I know you're supposed to be pure. You're supposed to have gone to confession. You're supposed to be basically absolved of sin when you take communion. But obviously, when you watch 95% of a congregation go up and get communion, they can't all be clear. You know, someone's got to be sneaking up there, right?
So I think it's important to phrase it that there are really two veins.
Right.
There are kind churches where they're open and you will find a priest who is welcoming and says, you know, let's do a quick confession. They want you to do confession because that's in the Catholic system. The confession comes and then you're ready for communion.
Right.
And so there's confession in the service as well, just to make sure that it's easily done. So that's not something usually that anyone can't take communion for, even if they haven't been to church in a long, long time. They can come back and within the service or right before they can take a brief confession, and it's good. Come to the table. Right. Then there are churches that are much more conservative that essentially do what this guy is doing, where he stands as the vicar of Christ. He stands as the in-between, and he's somehow protecting the sacred through his judgment. If I was sitting in that dude's congregation and someone ever from the pulpit says to you, we don't welcome an idea here,
right,
you should either do one of two things. You should hold off from what you want to do to them and maybe tackling them and teaching them a lesson, or you just leave.
Getting up and leaving would be one thing. I would have to say probably the phrase that caught me most off guard is over my dead body. Wait,
look at Birdman. Damn,
yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Is it a sin to punch a Catholic priest in the mouth during communion? Asking for a friend.
Just grab the blood of Christ and just pour it over his head. That would be an interesting situation.
Things happen, you know.
That'd be an interesting situation.
Sport.
What if you accidentally sneezed in the wine and blew it all over his face? That'd be kind of fun.
No.
We shouldn't obviously take direct action against anyone. A priest saying over my dead body, It just seems very strange that a priest would use that lingo. Like, so in other words, Joe Biden's there. He's in line for communion. He says no thank you to Joe Biden. And like Secret Service pulls out a gun and says, you will give Joe Biden communion. And he just looks the guy right in the eye and goes, you can shoot me and take the communion from me. I'm not doing it. I mean, like, what? Like, what are we taught? What are we even taught? And you're just going to callously say over my dead body as a man of faith? I mean, I find that very strange. Just a really weird phrase for a priest to use, over my dead body. Now, it'd be one thing to say, if someone's in need and distress, I will do my best to protect them, and you will not take the weakest of us without my objection. Over my dead body, will you come into my community and pull out the illegal immigrants or whatever? That would make sense to me as a peaceful statement of, I will personally blockade to protect other people. That makes sense. But to oppress Joe Biden's opinions, apparently on abortion, he would lay down his life.
And as the one who is standing there as the stand-in between what, as Catholics believe, eternal life is in the bread and the wine. It is a sacrament.
Right.
It is literally a gift of the covenant between God and man in that way. Right. Yeah. And there are basic ways that it is used, and Joe Biden has done nothing to not deserve that. So for this priest to stand there and make the theological case that his judgment is willing to stand there, especially as a literalist Catholic, which I am not, but as a literalist Catholic, this guy believes seriously that he's holding the salvation of God from Joe Biden in his statement. Let's be clear.
Yeah. And let's also be clear, Joe Biden isn't saying people should get abortions. He's just saying they shouldn't be restricted from people. So again, that's why it's a lie to say he's pro-abortion. Everyone's anti-abortion. Some of us just think it should be safe and available if needed, which is at a woman's discretion. There's a huge gulf there. In other words, is it a sinful idea now that the Vatican has come out and said they won't bless gay marriage? Is it a sinful idea for me to think gay marriage is okay? I'm not gay. I'm not getting gay married. But because I believe gay marriage is okay, that makes me a sinner? How's that possible? In other words, how can so my own personal belief that's against Catholic dogma is itself a sin? I don't know. That makes
and even more than that, if you take it down to the basic level, I have to change in order for God to love me.
Right.
That's the key question.
Yeah. And he's the judge willing to lay his life down to keep Joe Biden from taking communion. I don't get it. It doesn't follow any of my understanding. And by the way, I'm not as good at it as atheist Husker is, but I'd love to ask this priest what he thinks about the Old Testament verse about abortion.
Oh, for sure. He just,
that's not what it really means.
That's part of the Pentateuch. You have to take that with the priestly tradition.
Great assault. Yeah,
sure you do.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, you're not a literalist. No, it's a sin to commit homosexuality. No, it's, my friend, you will not find the word homosexual in the Bible.
Right.
Because it didn't exist.
Right.
Many men had sexual relationships with their what would you call it? Their mentor, I guess would be the best word. Sex was very different back then.
Right.
We don't want to get started on this conversation,
but again, I want to be very clear though.
Paul is wanted.
Well, Chris is pretty bright, and Chris is someone that will listen and learn and understand. Like, he's not just throwing around words. He's a good guy. I can vouch for him, and that's America's man. The trick, what I'm saying, Chris, is actually even a level below that. While I agree with what Marty said, this is a level below it. Simply believing in gay rights, even if you honestly believe that your Christian Bible says homosexuality is wrong, which again, you're going to need to cite chapter and verse because I don't think you'll find it. But even if the Bible said that, I'm sinning if I don't want to restrict rights to gay couples. Right. And again, this starts to get into this attitude of like your Christian beliefs versus politics and the whole realm of humanity. In other words, what this priest is doing that I think is one of the fundamental problems with religion and Christianity is he is saying basically he believes the Bible this way and everyone else must also believe the Bible his way, including a politician banning abortion because he is against abortion, even though, as I've said several times, I'm sure Joe Biden is also against abortion, but he understands that women need to have the right to safe and available abortion without interrogation and prosecution and all these other things. So there's a major gulf between being pro-choice and pro-abortion. So the idea that being pro-choice makes you pro-abortion and you can't take communion is mind-boggling. To me, that's taking religion far beyond what it was ever intended to be.
Well, okay, now you've nailed it 100%, and now we're here. Now I want to play it one more time. Let's
play it one more time. Let's hear this pious bastard.
Based on what you just said, Jeff, think about, okay, you're right on all of it. Okay. Now the next level that I want to focus on, notice how in this is only 41 seconds long. Notice how he talks about ideas.
Yeah.
Okay. Because this is the big one that I think is where the QAnon,
I know where you're headed. Yeah.
Are playing levers here. So check this out one more time with just the focus on ideas.
Even if you're pro-abortion, but your ideas are not welcome here, and they will be given no quarter. The same with Joe Biden. He's a Catholic. He's a member of the family. If for some reason he would be in Buckeye on a Sunday, Joe Biden is welcome to come to Mass here. His ideas are not welcome here. And if you ask me a follow-up question, would you give him communion? No. Over my dead body. Not until he repents. He's a public figure. He needs to publicly repent.
For what?
We need to pray for his conversion.
From what?
Being pro-life. Being pro-life.
Being pro-choice.
I'm sorry, being pro-choice. Yeah.
So it's a sin to be pro-choice. We've answered that question.
And it's a sin to think it.
Yeah, wow. That's interesting. I can't track that, but that's fine.
Well, don't bring those ideas here.
Yeah, that's right, Kim. Kim's got the right point. Make abortion illegal, but give every man vasectomies and then reverse them to have children. That's right. That's how we could solve it.
There you go.
Yep.
I wouldn't give Biden communion. His ass doesn't deserve repentance. There you go.
Oh, wow. That's a nice Christian thought.
We might have to have a remedial class or two.
Yeah, you might need to go back to Bible school. Maybe you need to go back through confirmation class. Yeah.
Does this priest get to make those decisions? Isn't he just a servant? No. He is the officer in charge of administrating the word and sacrament in his call. And that is the legal language, that is the official language, and that's exactly what his job is. So he gets to tell his authorities, even in his church, who might come down and try to say, listen, you need to straighten up. He actually can run in a fiefdom. And there are so many priests, and we know a lot of other reasons that that's a terrible thing, because when nobody can question the king and the king can stay on this little campus for 30 years,
right,
bad things happen.
Real bad things.
And not just always the sexual bad things. A lot of times it's the spiritual abuse. Now I want to just ask one last time, Jeff. You were 15 once.
I was
too. How would you have sat through that sermon?
I would suspect it would have turned my stomach.
Yeah, and then you would have been like, hey, Marty, let's go break shit and get out of here because this sucks.
Let's never come back here. Yeah. And you said the word ideas. I don't know if we were going to loop back to that exactly, but I guess how do you separate a person from their ideas? He says Joe Biden's welcome, but his ideas aren't, and he wouldn't give him communion. Well, doesn't giving communion come with him being personally welcome in the church? I mean, I just find that
that's what he means, Jeff. Is those ideas. They're for those people. It's the beginning of a dehumanization process. Right. This happens similarly theologically in the Holocaust, in the 30s in Germany. This is literally what happened in the churches. The grace left the building. Bonhoeffer talked a lot about it in The Cost of Discipleship when he discusses the theological term cheap grace. And he said that they threw cheap grace around like a cheap jack's wares. That was his phrase he used all around that book. And in that book, he basically describes that grace was free. It was your person. Oh man, I confessed to God last night. I'm good now. So we're good. You know, we just did, $10,000 and we robbed a bank and did a bunch of blow and had a bunch of hookers. But this morning I got baptized and we're good, and fresh start.
Right.
Fake shit.
Right. Well, and again, it comes to, okay, so I'm just going to spit out the first ideas that come to my mind. Not all Americans are Catholics. So for the president to feel that non-Catholics could choose if they want to have an abortion or not, I don't see how that's a sinful idea. To me, I'm not putting two and two together. How does allowing people whose faith doesn't dictate they shouldn't get an abortion, allowing those people who don't have that faith belief to get abortions if they want to. So basically, you either have to, if you're a politician, you have to actively be banning abortion, or you're a sinner. Is that what? Because by the way, no one is actively banning abortion at the moment.
Right.
I mean, so all politicians aren't welcome for communion at this guy's church, apparently, because they're not actively banning abortion. I mean, just that the whole logic.
Or you're not fully in the hate that I'm in.
Right. Right. Hey, look, it's Sir Ludwig. Welcome. We have a Nazi.
Oh Lord. Well,
I muted him.
I'm not big on that philosophy, but you know,
I muted him. I'm not going to listen to a Nazi tonight.
No. Those days are past us, where those folks are going to get, you know, the prime time of our energy.
No.
Because
he was in last week, but he didn't say anything. I guess this time he thought he'd say a lie. If anyone doesn't understand the definition of murder, there's no way abortion complies with the definition of murder. Just FYI. That would make condoms murder. I mean, let's use our heads for a second.
Well, isn't it interesting? I don't know enough to speak on this, but there was a conversation I was in the other day where someone was saying that someone tried to take out a life insurance policy on the fetus.
That's entertaining, and I'm going to just guess that was illegal.
Or I don't know if it was legal or not, but I think they were forcing the issue with a bunch of people, you know, sort of considering it. And oh my God, what happens if the person gets an abortion after, or, you know, a natural abortion after if it's a person, then you should be able to get a life insurance policy on it.
What if you trip down the stairs and lose the child? You've committed a crime. I mean,
yeah. Wow. What an interesting and thoughtful and well spent amount of energy.
Right. Well, what's funny is, sometimes those are what you think. That was a pro-life person trying to literally insure a fetus. Sometimes it's the opposite. It's a pro-choice person knowing.
I think it was a pro-choice person.
Yeah, it's a legal folly. Yeah, it's a legal folly to bring up the point that you're all stupid. And you know what's really crazy? If we valued women and we valued pregnancy, you could just make it a bigger crime to murder a pregnant woman. You don't have to call the fetus a human. You could just protect pregnant women. FYI, everyone.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that a crazy idea? Protect pregnant women. Even if they might be on their way to the abortion clinic, you could still make it a crime, a double crime, to kill a pregnant woman.
I'm not sure those ideas are welcome here, Jeff. That's some pretty free thinking, buddy.
What? Pregnant women could be a protected class?
Whoa,
that's crazy talk. Yeah, and by the way, if North Carolina wants to protect women from transgender bathrooms or whatever, they could maybe convict some rapists once in a while, if they're really interested in women's safety. How's that for crazy? What's the national conviction rate on rape? Like 20% or something? It's tragic. It's tragic. If you care about women being abused, maybe you should enforce some of the laws we already have about rape.
Wonder what the thoughts about, and this is just a poll question that maybe has never been asked. What are capital punishment supporters' thoughts about castration?
Interesting. I don't know that answer.
I might have to do some research.
It's actually very ironic, I'm sure you know, the pro-life people tend to be pro-capital punishment, which is very odd.
That's kind of what I was wondering about, and they're very not about demasculization or demasculinization.
Oh yeah, no, you better not get anywhere near my masculinity,
I'm
right?
wondering where they roll on that tough on crime stance, because I don't see why. If someone did something to somebody I would love, I'd vote for the castration part. Like, you want to fix it? There's a fix.
Well, of course,
keep them out of the jail, no problem.
I'm sure there's a misnomer in there, which of course is rape is more of a hate crime is more of a violent crime than a sexual crime. So I'm not sure castration would effectively reduce that person's propensity to rape in the future. But I'm for all kinds of punitive damages on rapists. But it's funny. We all say we're against rape, right? And then what happens? Someone in their community or someone in their organization, someone they work with, gets accused of it, and all of a sudden all the excuses flow. People act like they're against a lot of things, and then like their dad gets accused of it, and all of a sudden they're like, "Well, maybe she was asking for it." It's like, you really pull your head out of your ass. This is when you stick by your beliefs. If you're against rape, guess what? When it's your dad, you still should be against rape.
Birdman forever. I obviously believe that it is cruel and unusual punishment, but I'm just trying to figure out the logic of the right.
Yeah,
trying to figure out where we can stay tough enough on crime.
Yeah, executing executing innocent people is also cruel and unusual punishment. And I believe they've proven through forensic investigation that 1 in 10 capital punished executed people was innocent. So even if it was 1 in 100, that's too much to be killing people, right? There's actually some great Brian Stevenson. If you guys aren't big on capital punishment, Brian Stevenson has a TED talk on it. There's a lot out there to you can just absorb. You don't even have to read, because I'm not a huge article reader. I don't like to just put my head down. I rather I'm an audio visual learner. But the reason we execute people instead of, like, the reason we don't rape rapists is because someone would have to be the rapist raper, right? No one wants to be the rapist raper, because then you've got this logical circle. The only reason we can execute people is we've taken the individual out of it. We've created the 3-button kill machine or the firing squad. So we only kill people because no one's hands are dirty. And so, that's just an interesting little side note, that capital punishment only works because there's no killer of killers. We've found a way to broaden the responsibility so that one person doesn't kill the killer, because if one person killed the killer, I think the argument is nobody would be able to do it. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, we live in a time when that's probably not true. There's a bunch of reasons to be anti-capital punishment. I used to be for the concept of capital punishment, and maybe I still am the concept, but the application is terrible. The application just doesn't work. I'm
opposed to the capital.
I'm opposed to it as is, for sure. The concept doesn't bother me so much, but the application is just so freaking terrible. I mean, go online and look at, like, the last 50 men executed in Texas, and just tell me if you find a trend at all.
Right.
Yeah. Probably the last 50 across the country. Go look at the last, start Googling the last people killed by lethal injection. You'll find a little trend.
So there's just a core reality of why I don't believe in capital punishment, and that is that at the core, to solve a problem with violence at the end doesn't end it, and
it's a good
socially,
argument.
entity, energy wise, it still doesn't end, and it's so fucking expensive.
It's very expensive.
It takes up. I've worked in jails and worked with people who've worked in jails where there've been capital punishment happening. And it takes up so much of the energy, and it puts everybody on edge, and it causes violence throughout the rest of the inmate population. I mean,
it creates a human that has nothing to lose. I mean, if you're on death row and you're going to be executed in the next 6 months or something, you have nothing to lose. It doesn't hurt you to hurt guards. It doesn't hurt you to hurt other prisoners. It just creates 1,000 things.
We've moved past the days where it's like back in the day in the Old West, when Billy the Kid would come in and rob and kill a town. And then, go to the next town. At some point, you had to put a friggin', because there was nowhere to go or hold them down. They had to just put a rope around their neck and end it. That's a different thing.
Right.
And George W. Bush and others in the Republican Party specifically, but also the Democratic Party, because there's a lot of racists in the Democratic Party too.
Sure.
And then the crime bill of the 90s was a great example of it. What they did was they tried to do the same philosophy in California, especially Southern California, with the gangs and the cocaine in the 80s and into the 90s.
Right.
And so they brought all this capital punishment, man, 3 strikes, you're out. Dude, I can remember the first time I talked in a jail to a guy who was facing his 3rd strike. He was 24 years old. He'd been busted at age 19 in a car with some cocaine in his pocket at 19. So he had 2 friggin' strikes. He was 25 years old. He walked into a 7-Eleven and shit went sideways, and he got popped, and he was looking at, he was the Mexican kid and got arrested for a crime, whether he did it or not, whatever he did. And he was like, I'm looking at 25 years and I'm going to get 20. I'm like, the judge isn't even going to look, because they didn't have the ability to be flexible.
Right.
Mandatory.
Right.
3 strikes, dude. And I'm looking at this person, and I'm sure he's got issues, but I'm like, what a cost. What a waste of him, of his family, also of every bit of cash that's going to go into paying all the guards to watch this guy rot.
Right.
And then when he comes out, he's going to be a state. He's going to be part of institutionalized.
Yeah.
And then you go outside that little interview meeting and you realize, oh my God, there are thousands of these guys here in this one building. And that's our system. And it's all about cash. And I want to say this before we go very far tonight, and that is, and Jeff, I'm going to take a pretty big stand on this for myself. You don't have to agree with this. You can come in your own way, obviously. But I am 100% hopeful and sounding the bell with everybody I can to say that this is the time and place to legalize cannabis nationally or decriminalize it federally, whatever the move is going to be, to allow the banking bill to go through so that states that have been doing this work for a long time can get past having to have cash transactions every single night with stupid guards and all that stuff so they can digitally bank.
Yeah.
And that we allow states to continue to identify it as they are, and maybe a federal way to say we're just decriminalizing it. You know, states don't want it. You have to live with that. You know, and really trying to back them up too. I don't care how they do it, but also expunging, as Joe has already starting to get heat for, let's get people out of those criminal records for the weed stuff. And the reason I think it's an important thing is because if something happens to one senator, we are fucked.
Yeah.
And so there are a few things that are going to change a lot of lives. The reform package or the COVID package was the first one. It's going to change a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
Change a lot more people's lives. Immigration, the Build Back Better plan, which is on the title tonight. I don't know if we'll get into that, but the cannabis piece has to happen. Utilize the 420 upcoming holiday, use Easter, whatever the fuck, use it. Be celebratory, recognize a growth in our policy, and recognize how much money. Tell people how much money this has cost.
Yeah, the money is key. I think the only exception I think personal use quantities, make it legal, expunge all that. I do have a little problem. I mean, someone who was caught with, hundreds of pounds transporting interstate or something. I mean, when you were actively part of a black market that, people were possibly being
that's illegal. That should stay. I mean, sure.
But even those past convictions, so I don't know. I mean, I'm probably willing to go all the way up to some huge quantity, like a pound. I mean, for an individual to have a pound of marijuana would be quite bizarre.
Think it's more about the nonviolence of it. If you're a pilot and you had 400 pounds and you were the pilot and you're doing 2 life sentences, really, man?
The only part of that I kind of scratch my head now, I guess it all depends on where you were in the supply chain. Cause like people get basically almost kidnapped to mule this stuff across the border, right? Like people get forced at gunpoint to bring drugs in the United States, I think, in some scenarios. Yeah. I mean, in other words, so there is violence in the system. Just because you're buying a pound in Wichita, Kansas, doesn't mean that pound didn't get 3 people shot in Mexico or something. I mean, I'm just saying, I think the supply chain is the problem I've always had with it being illegal and people still using it. Is it's like now that Colorado has it legal in Kansas, it's all just coming from Colorado, obviously. And so there's no illegal.
Oklahoma, I bet you guys are getting more Oklahoma weed now because it's the Wild West in Oklahoma.
I haven't heard
Colorado is very regulated, but everybody I know that moved to Oklahoma, they're like, you can do anything you want. They don't even make you fill out the forms.
I'm only 13 miles from Oklahoma. I had no idea it was pot Wild West down there.
Wackadoo.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm for making it legal. This is one of the issues that I'm really honestly indifferent on. I think the criminalization and all the people locked up for small amounts of weed is ridiculous. As far as whether it's legal or not.
They bought a lot of tanks and SWAT gear.
Yeah.
That's what the cops really don't like about it. Yeah. It is a money train that leaves and they have to find a new way. Yep. But then I talked to cops in Denver and when I was in Sacramento and they were like, my God, thank you. We finally got done with the stupid weed.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I got more burglaries and shit that I can handle. Like, I can't deal with your stupid weed, guys.
And how many of those cops were casually smoking pot,
Yeah, or selling it to make rent.
Maybe not all.
Just weed.
I believe it was Omaha. A dare cop got busted with something pretty big, like a QP or maybe even a whole pound. That's a lot of pot for a cop on his downtime to have.
That's what he picked up in the last car, man.
So anyway. I mean, look, if to decriminalize it, you make it legal, I mean, that's fine with me. I think, honestly, in Wichita, they've decriminalized to a pretty large amount. I want to say it's still illegal to have and everything else, but I want to say they don't press charges for, like, under an ounce or something. And an ounce is a lot of pot. For an individual to be running around with more than an ounce, that's a pretty decent
That's a big pocket. That's a big pocket.
In my mind, that's a big supply. It's been a long time since I've been around any measurable quantity of pot, but in my mind, an ounce.
You're like,
is a lot.
Do you have a rabbit? Why are you have that much cabbage?
I laugh because I have a big jelly jar in my kitchen that's full of oregano. At the end of the season, when it got ready to freeze last year, I cut all the oregano off this plant and just put all the leaves in this jar. So I have what looks like pretty crappy weed, but like a jar of crappy weed in my kitchen. I'm always laughing like some cop's going to come in here and think I've got this big supply. But
check his oregano, Bob.
Yeah, and they're going to smell it. They're going to be like, this is definitely pot. No, it'll depend on how smart the cop is, I guess. But
like, light that up.
Anyway, yeah, no, if it's decriminalizing makes it legal and letting it sell, because again, it doesn't make, again, now you're starting to get into illegal supply chains. Okay, it's legal in Colorado, apparently Oklahoma. So now someone's driving it across the border illegally to then sell it in Kansas illegally. And that's when you get back into black market. I mean, sure, it's.
Oh yeah, dude. I've heard the stories about the kids.
There's
like kids from Iowa that like 10 kids gave them their money, and then they drive all night across Nebraska, and then they get back, and then they get back to Iowa, and they're just busted with all this. Dude, yeah, just stop.
Yeah, the illegal supply chain stuff is still makes me a little nervous, because if you can't legally have it, then it's illegal to transport it, and so you're creating this. I mean, I get it. It's Cam selling to his 5 friends. I mean, it's not like some big cartel, but yeah, we might as well just break it open. But
well, I think it's a big issue for a lot of families who are dealing with people that have tails and are dealing with shit that they've been caught in the system based on weed.
Oh, definitely.
And I think that's part of what Joe Biden promised to do, and Harris as well. We're both on that, and they need to make sure it happens, because I hate to tell you, I live with an anxiety about the fact that we're such a slim Senate. We need to get everything done we can as fast as possible.
Agreed.
That we can. And I think there are Republicans that are waiting to jump on a support of that legislation too, because I actually was watching CNBC the other day, and they were talking about it as if they know the agenda, and they probably do know the agenda 2 or 3 weeks in advance, as if we're about to hear about this shit right around Easter. Because they were like, yeah, we're really looking at the New York market and when it pops, and when the news is out that it's going to make the change, and New Jersey just legalized it, and now all the people in New York are running over there, and that's not going to work for New York. They're going to want that money to do that. So,
yeah. I mean, I say go ahead and make it legal everywhere. It's not a personal issue for me. It's not on the top of my radar, but
I find it to be a social justice issue for a lot of people I know.
Oh yeah, the people that are in jail for a dime bag. I mean, that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It took so much more energy to incarcerate that person than is even encapsulated in that dime bag of
lives are ruined over that,
Right. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. And of course, the fighting in the street. Mm-hmm. And don't forget the fighting in the street over it, because it's a black market. So you can't just let the guy next door start selling pot when you're already selling pot. So, that's when a lot of, street crime comes out, and all that stuff. Now, of course, I think a lot of that crime is over heroin and cocaine. I don't know that there's bloody drug wars over pot, but I'm sure it's happened. I don't know. You obviously can't call the cops when you get ripped off in a drug deal when pot's illegal. So anyway, might as well make it like a sanctuary.
Drug wars. I've missed that headline. Maybe
I mean, I could be wrong.
I'm sure there are. Actually, I'm sure
I could be wrong, but part of the gang war of the '90s was like drug dealing territory, right? Like market share. Now they were dealing again all kinds of drugs.
Crack.
Right. Probably a lot more crack than anything else. But I'm sure they were also selling pot. I mean, if just my 2 cents. But again, I'm not trying to make pot the hell.
Thank you for listening to my hot button issue number 2 tonight, because those were 2 of the things I want to talk about, was that priest, and that this is the time. This is a window that needs to get this done, because this will be a social change issue that will be a lasting one that will allow a lot of industry, a lot of small businesses, a lot of people who can. And there are a lot of guys in Colorado, a lot of people in Colorado who are small, independent growers. They have about 20 plants, and they're really good botanists, and they're making a living doing that. It's just an interesting industry, and same with the hemp industry. There's a lot of stuff going on in agriculture, and in a lot of our states, there's not a lot of stuff going on. And if there's a lot of empty warehouse space, there should be something growing in it. Even if it's alfalfa sprouts, there should be something being used in old space. And that's happening in Colorado. It's happening in California. It's happening in places where people are like, dude. But in Nebraska, that's not an option. People are told that it's going to kill your kids.
Right. Yeah.
So again, 2 Americas.
Yeah. One of my biggest pothead friends in high school, he ended up working security at Area 51, believe it or not. And now he's private security in Israel for somebody. I have no idea exactly who he works for. Yeah, he went into the Navy as a medic and did a combat medic. And then, there's pictures of him with a gun. So he must have gone full infantry at some point. And then, private security, like Blackwater kind of thing. In fact, he and he and his friends on Instagram were sharing, hey, Blackwater's back, and they were all amped about it. I was like, Jesus Christ, who are you, dude? The pothead kid that couldn't pass Spanish 1 is now a merc of some type. Anyway, it's just like
probably good at holding a gun and sitting in a truck, man.
And go for it, man. I guess, again, I don't hold it against him, but he's just, the guy that was like the biggest sort of burnout in high school. Like now he's like, jogging through Tel Aviv with his camera on, showing on Instagram Live. It's just talking about commitment and ethics and responsibility. It's kind of like what has happened in the world.
How did I get here?
Yeah, how did he get from that to that? But good for him. I thank you for your service. If you're out there, Glenn. It's just funny to see the reversal in some people's lives.
Sure is, man.
Yeah, it would actually be kind of interesting. I wonder how many. I think it's just a natural reflex that some of the sort of wildest and craziest like teenagers turn into the most conservative adults.
Well, like, you get it out of your system at different times, maybe.
Well, or you look back and wish someone would have kind of kept you on the rails a little more or something. I don't know what it is. Yeah. Or you got it out of your system and now you think everyone should be good because you've gotten it out of your system. I don't know what it is.
So back to the band. When are you guys gonna start practicing? What's your life? And then this was the other question. What happens if one of the dudes in a band doesn't want to get the thing? Do you use social pressure to say, dude, we're gigging without you?
I think
I'm not saying this about your band.
Yeah, the good news is I think luckily my band, I think it's working. Well, a member of my family is seriously suggesting that they're worried about the risks of the vaccine, which I was like, the risks of the vaccine are zero compared to the risks of COVID. So I don't even know what you're talking about. But yeah, if you have one person that won't get the vaccine, I mean, I guess that's the question. Again, in one of my organizations where we have like 40 members, I mean, my thought was if we've gone to the timeline where everyone could have had both their shots, if you opt out and then get sick, I mean, you can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink. I mean, we're all immunized. You get sick either from one of us or somewhere else and get hurt. Because my big thing about not meeting was I don't want to transmit it to someone who then dies. I'd feel terrible. Even if we both got sick, it's not clear which way it went. I would still feel terrible. But if it's past the time of vaccines and I shouldn't be able to carry it and you shouldn't be able to catch it, then we
got on your armor, dude.
That's right. If we all have our armor on, I think I shared a picture the other day. It's 2 beekeepers wearing their full suit and another guy getting stung by bees. And the caption is, I told him as an expert he should wear his mask, but he started talking about his rights. If you want to be killed by COVID because you didn't get a vaccine and refuse to wear a mask, I mean, at some point, unfortunately for me personally, it affects me because you'll probably end up being one of my wife's patients, and that sucks because I'd like her to be done with work earlier than midnight. But besides it affecting me personally, because my wife might be your doctor. I mean, at some point, if you'd insist on getting sick, it is America. If you insist on getting sick, I guess I can't stop you. So short answer is that. Now that, of course, is a setting that's not in my home. So with the band, I would probably be like, well, I can't host because so-and-so is not getting vaccinated. So we'll have to find another place to practice because I don't have to bring that person into my home.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably a good boundary too. Yeah, thinking about that.
Yeah,
but I know this is happening with folks, and it's the reverse of other things that have happened with the bullying or the disrespect. It's just another piece of that. So
yeah, and I mean, again, just like freedom of speech. I mean, you can do what you want, but you're not free from consequences. I mean, if you choose not to get the vaccine, you may not be welcome in my house. I mean, that's just the way the world works. I mean, so I'm not mad at you. I don't have to let you in my house ever, Or personal property is one of our greatest rights in America, You don't have to let anyone in your home besides cops with the warrant. And even then you can resist for a long time, I'm sure, if you have a good lawyer.
Have you had any more thoughts and been watching this immigration stuff? Do you have any more creative thoughts about that?
I think what you said, I said years ago, the way I've always solved this problem with conservatives, they're freaking out about it. When they were separating kids and all this back in the day, and they were still somehow trying to defend it. What I said was something you echoed recently, which is, why don't we just have enough judges to solve it real time? Why aren't we just getting this? You find this person on the border, get them hydrated, give them a meal, have them meet with a lawyer. We all know this is a Pareto chart kind of problem, right? They meet with their lawyer. They either have X or Y or Z, or either they've been threatened personally by a militia where they're from. They're starving where they're from, et cetera, right? There's just a list of claims you would have that would make you a viable asylum seeker. So their lawyer meets with them and sees what they qualify for. They bring it in front of the judge. The judge sees if they actually do qualify for it or not. And then they're either admitted or held or deported. And just, the problem is a turn time problem. We shouldn't be detaining people. We should be processing these cases. And because truthfully, I'm sure there's many situations where people do need to be sent back. Again, I'm not an immigration lawyer, so don't ask me to list them. But there probably are times where someone does need to go back. Let's just say they're seeking asylum because they're wanted for a crime in their home country. Well, that might be an international law violation to take a criminal from another country. You might have to send them back. So just process them in real time, and either they can stay or they can't. But we shouldn't be detaining them. I think the detention is what's really upsetting. That's my thought.
And I also think that we can learn from Trump's critique of the release. And that's why I think we should build campuses, all along the border. And they don't have to be a lot of campuses, but there could be 4 or 5 of them in Texas where they've got enough college buildings. They can add a couple more where there's a dorm, there's a way to come in, because we have to reestablish ourselves as if not a moral authority on the executive level, if people are gonna wait around and say, well, we're gonna see what the United States does at the high level meetings with presidents and others,
right?
That's one thing. But on the ground level, people are gonna know whether or not we're a straight shooter if we take care of refugees.
Yeah.
What we have right now is the open sign, and then we slam the door in people's face because we're having a fight inside the store.
Yeah.
We need to get that shit square. And there are true refugees who we are their lifeline.
Right. Absolutely.
We are the good guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was my point. Define them as refugees, define them as asylum seekers, send them back because for whatever reason they don't apply. I mean, just process it more real time, and including all the people that have put in their paperwork and want to move here from Mexico. And we've all heard the story. My wife had a med school classmate that they've been waiting to get her spouse in the country for an extremely long amount of time, like 6 years or something. Like, if you have people doing the legal pathway and they file their paperwork and stuff, why does that take more than a couple days? Either admit them or don't. I mean, I don't know why it would be a long timeline. And obviously, if your legal immigration timeline gets long, you're encouraging people to do illegal things. It's the nature of the black market. I mean, why aren't we, again, why either tell them no or let them in? What's the delay? I mean, that's my 2 cents. Why is there a delay? Either we allow them or we don't allow them. It should be processed immediately.
Because we can't answer that question.
Well, apparently not.
We do not have a policy that says, you know what, we're good with refugees coming in, because even today they were like, Joe Biden's going to have a refugee problem if he says that, because there'll be 500,000 at the door. Well, guess what? There are 500,000 in the ground. I say, let's have the courage to do the go-ahead policy and say, you know what, if we end up with 100,000 kids that are coming from all over the world and they truly are refugees and we don't have to send them back, then we did the world a service.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
We're just scared to make that, and we're scared of numbers like 100,000 people. Oh, it's a caravan. No, it's not. It's a suburb.
Yeah, that's true. Zach makes the point on environment. I've made it in the show before, but I'll repeat it. Obviously, if the environment's going to keep getting warmer, there's going to be parts of this continent that aren't going to be as inhabitable as they are now, and so the issue will only escalate.
If you read The Fifth Risk, one of the reasons Michael Lewis goes off on the way that on the 9 words that we often talk about on this show, and how Republicans have attacked the government, especially Grover Norquist, when they tried to choke the government out with the tax cuts and all of that. One of the ways they talk about the government is that there's too much waste. And he was looking at a study that was being done that was looking at all 20 to 30 different potential problems that could happen if a third of the United States had to move away from all the coasts within 18 months because of global warming or tsunami. Like, that's what government's supposed to do. They're supposed to be looking ahead going, holy shit.
That's right.
What happens if the Mississippi becomes the coast?
Right.
Right. So beyond just discussing refugees of political stuff and the environmental refugees that are going to come from other places on the planet, we may have to have our own answers about that on this continent as well. And so the luxury of the wealthy landowner who is worried about keeping their suburb home in Florida for the next 30 years may at some point have to come up with a different value or be conflicted with a different value system that says, yeah, you know what? That golf course isn't going to be here anymore. We're going to have to build some fucking housing for people.
Right.
And a lot of people can't afford a $750,000 house. And so they can't move to certain states. There just isn't a place to go.
Right.
But yet somebody's got to pick the tomatoes.
Right. It'd be very interesting to know it's not a zero-sum game, but there is a max capacity, right? There's a finite capacity based on our current agricultural policies, natural resources, whatever. There would be a capacity. It'd be an interesting thing. I wonder what we run out of first. I would guess it's ag land, but we export a huge amount of agricultural products. So we clearly have a far surplus at the moment, and I would think
70% of the American farmland is grown for corn to feed cattle. It is not grown for human consumption.
Right. So there's these huge opportunities, right? So more efficient meats like chicken instead of beef or whatever. There's a lot of solutions where you could really increase food production dramatically. So I mean, where is the limit? I mean, is it just when you have to add enough housing that you start dramatically changing the amount of ag land you have? Because I mean, you and I both know a lot of people can live on a square mile section of farmland. I mean, a lot of people can live on that space. Yeah. Especially if you're building high rises and things. I mean, you could put 10,000 people on a square mile of ag land, no problem, I would bet. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's just an interesting thing to think about. I mean, people, I think one of the problems is, ironically, the people that are out in the big spaces like ag land are the ones most scared about it. When those of us that live in the cities that feel congested, you would think people that live in cities would be more scared about overpopulation, but it's actually the people that live out in the big wide open spaces that are like, what are we going to do with all these people? It's like you're standing on their porch, you can see like one house. What do you mean all these people?
3 miles to the next house, and they're worried about the invasion at the border.
Yeah, I mean, what if we just turned Nebraska into housing? I mean, that would solve that. We could house a lot of people on Nebraska. And that's a lot of space.
Let them earn their 2 senators.
Right in the middle of the country. You could just, it'd be easy to do supply chain. I mean, it'd be simple. There's a lot of positives.
Sir Zach, it's good to see you. Thank you for coming on in, and I hope you're doing well, man.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having me up here. Sorry that I couldn't join earlier. I was hiking, enjoying the great outdoors, watching the sunset. Awesome.
You got flipped off.
Those little Midwest hate.
California.
Windy, gray, flatland over here, and he's marching through what looks like Ireland countryside. Boo! Boo! I could move. It is a choice. I live where I want to live, so I shouldn't hold it against you, bragger.
Well, kind of speaking on the environment, right, with immigration, that is a massive, massive, massive part to all of this. I think, Jeff, you were touching on it.
Yeah.
Not only is the Central America going to become almost uninhabitable at this current rate, we're also looking at basically every single population center in the entire world is at danger, because the places that are most likely to flood happen to be the most fertile regions on Earth. And so that's where populations tend to congregate. So we're looking at the entire country of Bangladesh. That could be underwater. China's major population zones, those are going to be underwater. All of the islands on the Pacific, they're in danger of going underwater. The California Central Valley, in danger of going underwater. Florida, in danger of going underwater. Maryland, in danger of going
Central Valley goes underwater. I've thought about that when I lived in Sacramento. What would happen? You've been up there, Zach. You know that it's flat as a pancake past, out there past Vallejo. And then it's just flat. And then
Death Valley is below sea level, right? So you just have to the water has to get high enough to break over the lowest spot. I'm sure someone has the math.
Louisiana. Where else, Zach? I cut you off. I shouldn't have done that. Sorry.
Well, Birdman has it right. Louisiana is another place. You have multiple places in Europe. Actually, surprising enough, Europe is probably going to fare better, amongst all the countries. The Amazon basin that is at risk. That should terrify a lot of people. If we lose the Amazon, we're losing a lot of our life, right? Not just the life on our planet, but like our intangible ability to breathe on Earth, right? That's going to be put at risk. So the rising sea level threat is incredibly dangerous, and it kind of just fits into all these different categories, right? If you want to talk military security, our naval bases aren't equipped for a sea level rise of 3 feet, right? That's going to put our military at risk. That's going to put national security at risk. If you want to talk about immigration, if Honduras, Guatemala, if all those places become too hot to farm because, it's killing off all the banana leaves and everything else that's down there, and coca leaves and what else, then people have no choice but to come up north where it's better to live. That's going to affect our immigration. Not to mention the fact that within our own country, we might see people mass migration, within our own country. So there's so many problems here.
The good news is there's plenty of Canada. There's plenty of Canada. There's a lot of empty Canada. Canada is basically empty. So we can just keep moving north if they'll let us in. If they don't build a wall, if they don't get smart and build a wall.
Except let's be honest. So you've got Alberta, which reports are showing that the billionaires are increasing because of the fracking that's going on up there, and the money and the hard violence that's beginning to happen between Hatfield and McCoy kind of stuff of local billionaires who've been sitting next to each other for the last 3 generations, and now all of a sudden they're all rich, and it's not a safe place in Alberta. Worse than maybe the Coeur d'Alene area in terms of white supremacy. Maybe the hub of white supremacy on the continent is coming from Alberta, Canada, because these big landowners, man, they own a lot of land. So we say there's a lot of land out there. We say there's a lot of land in Montana or in North Dakota, but it's all owned by somebody. And you will get shot if you drive on that land. I don't care if you're a refugee or not. That is the conflict that we're going to be looking at in this country if New Jersey has to move to South Dakota. Right. Because there'll be more people going, and I don't give a shit about your property. I'm here now. This has happened in our country before. Squatters' rights have happened. Migration has happened. I know these things aren't on our front burner because there's a lot of things else, but this is what's going on. The shit's going to happen to us when we're not ready for it.
Right.
And, it's going to happen fast. I've been saying this a lot, and don't take this as like a will be prediction, but as a severe warning. We could lose Miami in the next couple decades. The water supply that feeds the city is in extreme danger from a whole number of things. We can talk about salinization because of the rising seawaters. We can talk about the Superfund toxic chemical sites that are within 700 feet of Miami's main water reservoir. Wow. We can talk about how the entire sewage system is completely screwed over there. So with the rising waters, you're gonna they're like I forget what the specific term is, septic tanks. Yeah. All these above ground septic tanks that the rising water is going to potentially cause damages there, which could leak out. You also have the mining of minerals in like kind of north. I forget the specific county Miami's in, but in the northern part of that county, you have mineral rock mining, and so the minerals are draining out and potentially going into the water reservoir. So you have a whole number of things, and all it takes is one Hurricane Maria to hit the city hard enough to have all that just come crashing down.
Well, it's a red state. I had to throw
red states. Living in a blue state, red states are like the drunk brother-in-law who shows up at the wedding that you're going to have to try to bail out. Or
yeah, that's right. These days, it's exactly how it feels. Definitely, the red states have told all the blue states, "Hey, hold my beer." We're like, I don't want to hold your beer, bro. Maybe you should just be responsible. Yeah. I mean, Miami Beach. Come on, man. Like,
done holding your beer, dude. I'm done
holding your beer, man. Next time you hand me your beer, I'm just gonna pour it on the ground.
Guys, don't put the fucking heat container things on the front of your windmills again in Texas. I mean, come on, man.
That's right.
Can you highlight? Can you highlight this comment from Princess Friday?
Yes.
Our world is falling apart.
Yes, sir.
So yes and no. My biggest problem with this is that all of the pollution that's ever been like created by humans is still in the air right now. From when we first started the Industrial Revolution, that pollution is still in our air.
Wow.
And so if you take that into account, America is responsible for 25% of the pollution that's in the world. 25% of our air pollution. It's crazy. And we're only 4% of the world's population. So yes, China recently has overtaken America in terms of like per year. But in terms of like the grand scale of things, America has contributed 25% of the pollution that's in our atmosphere.
What portion of pollution from, say, the 1860s, what part of that pollution remains in the atmosphere indefinitely? Doesn't almost everything undergo transitional processes and become acid rain, for example, or something? Don't most things like change form?
No, it's crazy. It's all still up there. There's probably some that has come down, right? Because of what you're talking about. There are certain processes that,
right,
kind of more natural processes that take away carbon from the atmosphere.
Right.
But it's not really like a substantial amount,
Interesting.
Because a lot of atmosphere is above the rain.
That's true. But you also, you have things like carbon dioxide that gets converted. You got things like carbon monoxide that get converted eventually, I would think, with some processes. Lightning or something would, lightning creates ozone, doesn't it? Or rain creates ozone, or anyway, I don't know. I guess I feel like some of that pollution from way back then would have become water by now, but I'm just speculating.
All right, Zach. So I'm going to just throw this at you. What about the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it was of the COVID breakdown in China, and then also here where we're looking around going, wow, the air seems cleaner because the people of Wuhan haven't been at work for a month and they can see the sky. What's the retort to that?
Yeah, so that's true, right? Like I kind of said earlier, China has surpassed America in like current yearly output. With
Gotcha.
that being said, though, it seems extremely hypocritical to say, "Hey, China's the problem," when you actually look and it's like, no, we're the problem here.
I get you. I just was wondering how that went with that. Okay, I see.
I need to do some research on that because I guess I'm just slightly surprised that the first tire that caught fire, all those particles are still in the atmosphere. I guess I thought there were some natural processes that I get that it takes a long time, and certain chemicals I'm sure go into the atmosphere and cannot be converted, and that's a problem. But I guess when I think about things like hydrocarbons and carbon dioxide, for example, I know carbon dioxide gets metabolized by plants, right? So that the first carbon dioxide that was emitted from a smokestack, that was converted to oxygen by trees hundreds of years ago, I would think. So I'm just kind of scratching my head on some of that, but I understand it's bad. And we all know that the what I would say about the Wuhan thing or wherever in China where they shut down for a month, the reason the air got clear is because all those cars weren't running for 2 weeks. And so the cloud that's being generated from those cars got to dissipate around the globe. I think to Zach's point, it just spread out real thin. It's still all there. It just isn't cloudy right there. But we all remember, I remember when Denver used to have terrible smog. I don't think Denver has smog. Denver used to have terrible smog. If you guys never saw the Denver smog, it was bad. And you could taste it. It was gross. Because the wind comes over the mountains and creates this eddy current where all that pollution from Denver would just sit there and swirl, basically. It wouldn't blow off, because like Kansas City, there's almost always a wind across Kansas City.
It just goes away.
They'd have to be burning tires on every block to create a smog cloud in Kansas City. But Denver, with that eddy current from the mountains, it was bad. And obviously several things have changed. We have catalytic converters. We have, my wife's a pulmonologist, and she was told in college that nobody in her department had seen anyone who had asphyxiated themselves with a tailpipe since catalytic converters became standard equipment. So that tells you how much carbon monoxide is reduced by a catalytic converter. Now, the problem with carbon monoxide is it doesn't take very much. You get carbon monoxide bonds with your hemoglobin like three times 30 times better than oxygen, something like that. Because, carbon monoxide is a toxin in our body, and your body does create a small amount of carbon monoxide. It creates a ton of carbon dioxide. So when carbon monoxide present, the hemoglobin grabs onto it because it wants to get it out of the body. So anyway, I know we've reduced our carbon monoxide output dramatically, but population in the 90s, lung samples from lungs. Oh yeah, World War II. Yeah, in the past, there's been horrible pollution stories, obviously. Yeah, we're doing better, I think. Things like the EPA. Now I get it. We said it before. Someone wants to build a factory and there's a puddle in the middle of it and it's called a wetland and they can't. And I understand it hurts people's feelings, but the EPA has brought us a long ways too, with a lot of much bigger issues. So you got to balance those two things. I mean, I understand people want to build a factory and it's a wetland, but I mean, on the other hand, if you don't have wetlands, you don't have wildlife, right. And you have pollution goes wild.
Well, and this gets into the ag bill too, because we need to. Yeah. I'm sorry, Zach. Go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say, when you get rid of wetlands, you increase the likelihood of flooding, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, wetlands are literally nature's defense mechanism against flooding. Yep. So,
and also they are the carbon sponge, and so if we're really serious about dealing with the carbon footprint, we need to monetize the work of American agricultural land and give agricultural whether it's farmers or landowners, give them a government program that allows them to facilitate more wetlands on their land. We know that it can drastically lower carbon in areas where the wetlands are free to thrive or be rotated into other farming land. I did it when I was back in the 80s. We used to do this all the time. And so it can work, but we have had a fence row to fence row policy. Man, you can make money on corn when you can grow 240 bushels an acre minimum, throw some fucking chemicals on it and call it good and run to the bank. And that's what we've been doing and calling it agriculture. We need to have a completely different connection to how we connect to our land. And expect that farmers can adapt, because they very much can. I've seen them adapt. Every time the Monsanto guy comes, they adapt. They buy a new machine even if they have to, just to make it work. So,
yeah.
Go ahead. One of the first big waves of immigration, when you had a lot of Mexican immigration into our country, that was caused by the Green Revolution, right?
Yeah.
That was something where an American scientist, I forget his name, but he was able to kind of on the forefront of kind of like gene splicing technology to get the best crop. And he found out, okay, we can make this really good crop, but we need to have heavy fertilizers and use a lot of water to support it. And so they ended up kind of importing that to Mexico, to India, and to various places across the world. But that had the consequence. I mean, it helped stop famine. That's important to mention. It was a good policy in that aspect, but it caused a lot of environmental degradation, and that ended up mainly hurting small farmers, which caused the first big migration of laid off Mexican farm workers into America. So all of these things are connected.
Yep. And our priorities from agriculture, it's a very important department. It puts a lot of money into the economy. And one of the things about agricultural dollars, because it's a foundational raw material and producer piece of the economy, is oftentimes farmers who make a dollar, that dollar where it's positioned in a town or in an economic system often rolls through an economy going upwards 7 to 9 different times because of the things they have to purchase, whether it's machinery and tires and mechanic work, whether it's seed and chemicals and ag business work, whether it's town and, stocking up your farm and other things. There's so many different places they have to put that money. And there's been a lot of economic work that's been done to show that farmers' money, when they have money, and it's not just fake money that comes from a subsidy, when they have, even when it's fake money that comes from a subsidy, they spend it and it rolls through an economy more times. It does more for everyone that way. And so, what if we had a revolution in this country where people were able to, find ways to make money with a little piece of land? Micro farming is much more possible now for a lot of people. And a lot of people during this vaccine I'm sorry, this pandemic and up until now have really checked some of their systems. How many people touch every freaking package of food that I have in my fridge? That's thousands of people touching every piece of food, and I think a lot of people are kind of like, man, I'd like to shorten that supply chain a little bit, simplify,
Yeah.
So
So
there's a lot of priorities changing.
Marty, then I actually got a question for you about that.
Yeah.
Tom Vilsack, do you think he's the right person to be facilitating this?
Not sure. I'm very nervous about that. But I do know that he has stood up to Monsanto in different ways. He had different interests in Iowa at the time that he was the governor, and he ended up at the time helping to aim money towards the ethanol industry, which was a very political move. But for a long time, corn farmers hadn't been able to make money. A couple decades, or 15 years, they had not had good prices, and ethanol was one of the ways they crawled out of the hole. And then trade deals with China continued on. When Obama was the president, China was trying to buy as much friggin' corn and soybeans as they could get. And the farmers in the United States were rolling in the money.
Right.
Trump killed that market. And they all knew it. And they all took those 3 different stimulus checks that went to farmers to try to bail their asses out. And they all were like, we'll vote for you again and give you another try. I don't think most of them did.
No.
So here we are now. We've lost our markets in China. They don't need us anymore because they went ahead and found somebody else who has corn in Brazil and Argentina. And so now we're actually looking at a double whammy in agriculture. We're looking at the fact that we lost our freaking market, and that the market that we were working with was an out-of-date system to feed a bunch of cattle that we're going to sell to a lot of beef-eating Americans. Americans' diets are changing. Our land priorities are changing, and then you throw on top of it the potential that our cities are potentially going to have to change. It all means, and you have every right to ask me that question a million times, Zach, because I was a supporter of him and you warned me better. But I also think that he is doing a good job in putting some things in place. And that was his first job. So he needed to help put order into the chaos. And I would love to see him do an 18-month stretch and then bail out and find somebody new who's ready to do a different kind of agriculture.
Yeah. Just muted our spammer, just FYI. I tried to coach, but he wouldn't be coached, so he got muted.
You're right, Princess Fridays are. You're absolutely right. Standing up to Monsanto is a big deal.
Yeah, how much Monsanto was sprayed? Was that all? Do you think that was all sprayed fence lines by hand, or do you think some of that was crop dusted, or how broadly was Monsanto spread? Do you suppose?
Jeez, oh man. Okay, so
I mean, I know in a farm that was like the go-to, right? Like
yeah, there was all kinds of stuff.
Roundup is like in a bucket, right? Like you had Roundup for fence lines, everything. But was it like, I don't know, was it ever crop dusted, or was it always applied?
Well, you can't. Yes, if you wanted to kill, but it's not a very good kill that way. No. A lot of times when they would do the Roundup, they would do a weed, like a bar. It would be a metal bar that would be really low to the ground with like a rope wick on it that just had the stuff in it, and all you have to do is touch little baby, leaves, and it'll die. So
I got you, like a bar.
They would do those. They would do a bar, or they would do the overhead sprayers.
That dripping bar thing, I'm sure no one ever touched that 3 times.
But you got to let me pull back a little bit though, because the chemicals that are used on a farm that we used in the 80s and 90s, man, that's a freaking show. I could do a show on that and be one to play later on when I'm not here. And people are like, man, he went too early because they did all those chemicals back in the day.
Spreading ammonia was pretty dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, you start out the year by putting anhydrous in the ground.
Anhydrous ammonia.
You got big friggin' tanks of anhydrous ammonia, and you put it in the ground. And I can remember the first time I ran out to take my dad a water jug, and he was putting on anhydrous, and I ran out into the field. And you go out in the field, and it's black dirt that's been turned over, and it's plowed. And there's knives that go about 10 inches down that shoot liquid nitrogen into the soil. And he just goes all the way to the end and back, up and down. And the soil is just, all the steam is coming out of the soil. So you're running along, and all of a sudden you realize, oh shit, I can't breathe because there's no oxygen in the field. You run out there, and it's all liquid nitrogen in the air. You're like, ugh. and you're about 20 yards from the grass, and you're like, "Ugh." So that's spring.
That's springtime on the farm. Yeah, that's springtime on the farm.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, kids running yeah. Okay,
Running
so then we get to
the
planting season.
Yeah.
Planting season, you will throw your seed in the planter, and the planter probably also has a sprayer, sometimes has a sprayer with it to just give a broadband kill of everything that's above the seed, because there's no reason not to spray at that time, because the seed's going in the ground and you can get a nice kill of any spring weeds. So that might be a nice time to drop some chemicals. But then comes June. And June is when everybody's up about this high, whether it's corn or soybeans. And that's when you go through for your first real kill. And that's not a month. That's not a Roundup. Those are a variety of, man, they used to be called Basagran and Banville and all these other chemicals that take broadleaf weeds or grass.
But they leave the crop. They leave the crop.
You build a concoction, and every year you go to the co-op and they'll tell you, all right, here's the new thing. And the metric in this life is dead weeds.
Right.
And I need to stop and recognize that mentality is the only thing that anybody gives a shit about. Right. Nobody's asking questions about residual effects to the water. No one's asking, culturally I'm speaking, this is just not something people consider. It's, you're a good farmer if you don't have weeds in your field. Okay, that's right. So important to recognize the value system. You might do those concoction sprays twice in June just to make sure, because some people are real judgy and real good farmers. And then the corn usually gets too tall to go through maybe one last time with a tractor or a sprayer, and you get a real high sprayer. You've probably seen those before with a big boom. Those go in when everybody's a little bit bigger, and those will usually spray another round of broadleaf chemicals. And so I can remember hearing numbers of back in the 90s of dad spend, and we only had about 1,000 acres, but it was a $60,000 to $90,000 bill on chemicals a year.
Wow.
And maybe the same, a little bit on seed, because at that time they'd already pulled into the GMO seed. So you have to buy it, and there's only one place to get it. And the bags of seed are like, fucking $800 a bag. And I haven't been farming. My dad's been dead for 13 years, so I haven't done any of it since then. And I know that that's probably all outdated because it's updated so fast now. And California farmers are the biggest farmers in the world. Iowa farmers are the biggest farmers for what they do in the world. So are Kansas farmers. So is every part of American agriculture.
North Dakota grows a lot of canola.
Speed, dude.
Yeah. I was up in North.
Get it done.
Yeah, North Dakota in September, the crop dusters were hitting all the fields real heavy. So they'd be spraying broadleaf weed killer. So not Roundup, some other bendazotane, glamoxifene, whatever the hell they're called. Yeah, one of them was doing a field right across the street from my stepdad's spot. So this crop duster was actually doing these big wing overs over the house and back down. So it sounds like you're in World War II all of a sudden. You wake up. And,
I love watching those guys. Yeah. A lot of those guys are hitting hay fields.
Well, this was canola field for sure.
Okay, canola. Okay. But a lot of hay fields here in Colorado, they get sprayed. And in California, up north of Sacramento, they'll spray the rice fields the same way. A lot of rice up there.
That makes sense.
And they don't want to drive in it,
No, because rice you plant wall to wall, don't you? It's not in rows.
And it's
right?
in water. And it's
it's row to row and it's in water, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they will grow a lot of rice around Sacramento, I believe.
Yeah, they do. It's a big flat pancake. And then north of there is a lot of nuts and almonds and different things. But no, agriculture is a great thing, and it gets overlooked because we've got so much tech and all these other stuff. But every time we eat, we're affected by it. Every time we spend money, we're affected by it. And when Build Back Better comes in, as we look at a Green New Deal, ag has to go with it hand in hand, because you have to force farmers to change with incentives and clear goals, and they will change because they like making money. And a lot of them like learning a new thing. They're not opposed to learning new things, but when
it's not just American farmers too.
Real fucking farm, dude. Sorry.
I mean, it's not just American farmers. I think part of the Green New Deal or any kind of large legislative package is Well, we need to start learning how to import some of our farming techniques that we can create in the United States down to Central America. Because one of the biggest reasons why there's mass immigration is because their farms are failing because of the rising heat. So if we can work in America, because we have a whole lot more technology, a whole lot more money to finance this, if we can figure out ways to make more heat-resistant crops that can survive down Central America, that's going to stop people from coming up to America.
Right.
People,
right.
There are people who want to come here, but a lot of these refugees, they don't want to be in America. They want to be in their homeland. They don't want to have to pick up, move to a country where they're going to have nothing, where half the country is going to hate them for just being there, right? People want to live where they've known their family and friends for generations. So we need to give people the opportunity to live where they want to live, which is generally in their home countries.
Definitely. I agree with that 100%. It's definitely a lie to think that everyone wants to move here just because it's so great. I mean, there are people that want to immigrate here. DevCat's a great example. And you should broadcast all the time how she wants to move to America. But that's not everybody everywhere. I mean, lots of people would rather stay where they are and be free. People want to be free where they are, right? They don't want to move.
And, one of the second biggest drivers of immigration from Central America is the gang violence that is in Central America. And one of the ways you completely undercut the gang's controls, you legalize weed across America, because that completely destroys those gangs' revenue streams.
Well, if the revenue is marijuana based, if the revenue is cocaine based, they're still running strong.
Fair.
Just FYI, it's one revenue. It's kind of like what we just talked about. The Bloods versus Crips in the 90s. How much of that was pot versus cocaine? I think it was mostly crack cocaine, right? But pot was part of it, and that's why I would guess the South American drug cartels. Yes, there are pot cartels.
Jeff, did you know that I forgot to bring this up a little bit ago. Mexico legalized recreational weed across the country.
I did not know that.
That was a month ago. That was last month.
I guess I didn't realize they were very hard on it to begin with. I mean,
they've been pretty. Yes, it was not a good place to get caught with it. And,
okay, I didn't know that.
Which is one of the reasons why so much of the illegal activity went on for so long, because they had these crazy laws that they never lived into, and so the scofflawing got into the drug trade in terms of all the different things. But they grow weed and marijuana. Or I'm sorry, they grow marijuana in Mexico, and they travel. It's not like it's coming from Colombia through there to get in here, or they're coming people that are coming from Costa Rica to go through there to get there. It's coming from Mexico.
Okay,
so
I
think that's kind of a monster change for the cartels on that side of the border already.
Yeah,
we should probably keep an eye on that.
Yeah, get ready for avocados to be super expensive.
Sorry, Zach, you got cut off.
I'd agree with you. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens, because you just cut off. I mean, Mexico's known for marijuana cartels. Like the Sinaloa cartel, one of the more famous ones from there. The Sinaloa region is perfect for growing marijuana. So this is going to be really interesting to see, does this completely undercut the cartels? How do they respond? Do they try to diversify, or do they just fall apart?
If America makes it legal, can we import marijuana from Mexico legally? Now, I believe it's not as good quality as the American stuff, but that's just...
Well, if America makes it legal, then we don't need to import it from anywhere, and that's going to further destroy the revenue stream. We can make it right here.
Sure. But I mean, theoretically, if theirs was as good quality and cheaper, like other Mexican goods, the point is it might solve several problems if they could legally sell it to us. The truth is, by the time you get all the way back to the grower, I'm guessing the guy, the people actually growing it they're basically slave labor too, I would imagine. I mean, in other words, the cartel's the one making the money. If the farmer could be selling the pot to America, they'd probably love it.
Right.
I'm just speculating. I don't know. I mean, we don't grow all of our own avocados. We get all of our avocados from Mexico. There's a reason why certain things are grown there.
No, it's the differentiation of the economy. Once it's legalized, will have to sort itself out. That's exactly right.
They can produce a better product at a lower price. Why wouldn't
or a different product, right? Just like wine, where you go to Santa Rosa for a particular varietal, and then you go 300 miles south, and they can't do it there because the sun and the clay and the wind aren't the same, right? So sure.
If I can go to
market.
If I can go to AmazonForPot.com and buy a pound of pot from anybody I want,
might well shop around.
Might be Mexican. I don't know.
Think cigars with that same thing.
Yeah, there you go. Cigars, perfect. Yeah, Honduran cigars are some of the best in the world, I think.
But they're different than,
right?
Something else.
Right. Anyway, that was a rabbit hole. Sorry, I ran us down.
Well, I think it's a rabbit hole that we don't ever talk about. Like,
if you can allow electronic payment, if Colorado would allow electronic payment, then and it's legal in Kansas, why couldn't I buy weed and you ship it to me?
Princess Friday Czar has brought up this point twice, and I'm going to give it respect because it's a good point. Zach, I apologize. This is coming up on the screen real quick.
Yeah.
Migrants that left are young, and this is true. You just, you take your gene pool and you pull out the youth. How is a country to survive when the old can't work?
Well, that is a question being asked by almost every single post-industrial economy country out there, right? You see in Japan that's something they're dealing with. I think in Russia, they're dealing with that. In America, we're dealing with it. I think I could be wrong on the specific number, but I think the fertility rate in America is 1.7 right now. And so for people who don't know, you need a 2.1 fertility rate to keep your population. Why? Well, you need 2 people to have a kid, right? So two makes sense. And then the point one is assuming for stillbirths, people who die very young, that kind of thing. So we're at a 1.7, which means we have a declining population. How do we solve that? Immigration, right? That's how we're going to be able to solve our aging population. And it's actually going to be one of the ways we fix Social Security. I think when it was first came out, Social Security had a 16-to-1 worker to elderly ratio. And that worked really well. Now we're looking at a 3-to-1, three workers for every 1 elderly. So it's
that number's got to be declining still.
Right. So if we can start getting more people to immigrate here, get them into our Social Security system, that's how we're going to be able to pay for this, right? We need immigration. And I just mentioned a way where we can limit immigration so it's not a crazy tidal wave. And I'm also giving people a reason why, hey, some immigration really is important for our country. It's actually going to be one of the reasons why I think we'll outlast China. China has a whole massive problem on the horizon.
They have a real massive problem.
Yeah.
Chinese people my age, the ratio of men to women is like 3-to-1. And they did that one child per couple thing, and their population shrinking, and it sounds like a despotic place to live if you're under 40 and a man. I mean, it just sounds absolutely terrible. And so they're gonna have all kinds of problems. I mean, I think they're already seeing suicide rates climbing. They don't have the population to keep things going. I mean, yeah.
Well, if we're jumping to China for a second, that whole thing is insane because it's created a whole cascading problems. Of course, you have the issue of you're going to have a lot of people who they're going to be elderly. They're not going to be able to work. And so you have all these elderly people in China and you have a very small workforce. That's going to be a massive problem. But another interesting side effect to the 3-to-1 male to female ratio is women in China, they know that they are a commodity. So what they get to do is say, hey, if you don't own 3 houses, bye. I don't care about you because there's another man who's going to own 3 houses. So what happens to the Chinese economy? Men prioritize saving up so they can buy houses, which means that they're not spending into the consumer market, which hurts their economy.
Zach, slow down a second. Slow down. Are you talking about a real thing?
Yeah.
No, I'm actually. Are you talking about a cultural phenomenon? You broke up for a little bit. I just want to make sure this is a real thing. So you're saying that culturally, in a booming economy, you've got no spending going on, or less spending because they're saving up money for the population problem and getting in
China specifically.
Wow.
In China specifically.
To buy an empty house, right? So, you can't live in 3 houses. So now they're buying up houses that sit empty.
And, China's actually kind of become a little famous for its ghost towns.
Wow.
Oh, that's wild.
For this situation, this is why.
Yeah, it's a big part of why. Another reason why is the bonds have low yields, right? So people don't want to invest in that. And then you have the stock market, which is notoriously volatile in China. So if you're someone who has money, you don't want to invest in that either. So the other way an asset is to own a house. So people are pouring into houses for both. One, it's the safest asset you can buy, and two, because they want to be able to get a wife. I think in 2018, 87% of home buyers were buying their second or third home.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, I've bought my second home several times because I've had to buy houses for forced moves before I sold my first house. But I've only ever owned 2 houses at once, and that was always an emergency situation. It was always get rid of one while I get into the second one. But that's crazy.
That's something.
That is very interesting. I hadn't heard that part of it.
We are some ignorant people, Zach. We don't know. We're Americans, and I love learning. Thank you.
I do know that in China, the life size, love dolls are extremely popular because there's just so many single guys that are like, I'm never going to be married, so I need a companion. It's crazy. There's also, of course, the other side of immigration that sometimes we skip over, and that, of course, is people's family members, their parents, their grandparents of any descent. The other thing, of course, that happens is we get a lot of – there are countries like India that are very class-based, and so if you happen to be brilliant but you're in the wrong class to go to college in India, you need to immigrate to the United States to get to college and be educated at a higher level. Mm-hmm. Or you are in the correct class, but you just want to move to America and you've got a skill set we need. So, of course, I mean, we could go down the list. I mean, Einstein, von Braun. I mean, some of our best scientists have been immigrants, and that's not going to change because our math scores and our science education are so poor in the United States. We're almost always going to need to import scientists and experts because we just don't create the number we should from our population numbers. So there's all kinds of immigration that's extremely positive for our country, and so when it just turns into, well, it's Mexican smuggling van loads worth of sex workers in the United States. I mean, that's just so antithetical to the truth. It's disgusting. I mean, the concept that we import our trafficked our trafficked people is just ridiculous. If you don't know that our trafficked people are homegrown, then you're really not very aware of what human trafficking is. The idea that we would import Mexican human slaves is, I mean, I'm sure it does happen once in a great while. But by the way, when it does happen, they're riding shotgun with a guy they're going to call their uncle. I mean, they're not bound in the back of a van. They've been put into human servitude by cerebral force, not physical force in general. But that's a whole topic for a whole nother scope, and I'd have to get my buddy who's an expert on it. But human trafficking victims come from your neighborhood. Yeah, they come from your neighborhood. They're not coming across the border in a van. It's
right.
It's tragically stupid thing to say by Trump, like many other things.
I mean, the point of this, what I'm kind of getting at is, I think last week, Ace very rightly said that China is a superpower that's on the rise, and it's at the point where America and China are almost on the same footing at this point, right? It's not going to be like that way forever. From my understanding, it's very possible China becomes like Japan, a super strong economy, very solid, but not superpower status. And because Japan went pretty through what China might go through soon. And I haven't even laid out like the worst possible scenario for China, which is they have like an 2008 housing bubble. That would kill their GDP, drop it by 15 to 20%.
Wow!
So
because
there's a whole lot that could happen.
These houses as the wealthy people have that going on in such a manner.
And what's interesting is a lot of people like to point out China's the scary communist country. Actually, it's an authoritarian state capitalist country that is extremely decentralized. So there's like this mythos around China that doesn't really exist. And if you actually look at the country itself, its social, a big problem it has is its social security network, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have a national one. And a lot of the local ones are really shitty. So we're talking about an aging population with no serious social security net. China's going to be in for it, and I'm not saying they're going to completely collapse, but I think they might get hit and punched in the face pretty hard, get down on one knee,
Boxcar Boston says it's the hunger for success and to do better if you are an immigrant to the U.S. Classes.
Well, there's a lot of places. I mean, I forgot her name, but one of the national security women that testified in the Ukraine investigation. You know, there's a lot of places in this world where if you weren't born in the right neighborhood or to the right last name or whatever, you're just classed by definition of class structure. You're capped. You can only go so far. Yeah. And so, yeah, for a lot of the world, you know, coming to America, you know, my wife has 2 partners that are Lebanese and one that's Vietnamese. He actually was a refugee after the Vietnam War. So, you know, she basically has 3 partners that are foreign born, and 2 of them are foreign educated, you know, that have come to America and flourished and are bright, great men, great to be around, have great families. And, you know, they can live in America and be Lebanese and Vietnamese and have a community of all their friends and family. And I mean, America does do a lot of really good things. I mean, it's easy to focus on the negatives, but yeah, it's a great thing for a lot of people to come to America. And so, you know, I think the concept that our immigration is people coming over the border.
But isn't that
our visa overstays are dramatically more than the border crossings, right? Like we only talk about one thing, but people who come here from Syria, 50-50. People come here from Syria during a travel ban and decide not to go back because they're afraid they won't see their families. I mean, that's also illegal immigration.
But isn't there just a stinginess to that whole motif that is something that's been sold to us that's just simply not true? That like just the whole nature of being protective around immigration right now.
Yeah.
Listening to what Zach was talking about with our population numbers,
right,
and the need to grow our population. When will the narrative occur to say, hey guys, we need more people. Let's get it on. Let's find the best. Let's set up an immigration system. But the truth is that all of us are secretly looking at the price of our houses go up going, I don't want anybody to move to my town.
Right.
I want the price of my house to go up.
Yeah, but I don't want to, I don't want to have to go to a different town because when those immigrants come to town, I don't want to live with them.
Well, white flight, yeah, that's sort of a separate issue.
Well, there's a lot of shit. And so
I'm hoping I can make money on this house. With all these forced moves, I've never made money on a house, so this house better make me some money.
I'm with you on that, and I'm not opposed to making money on a house.
I know what you mean.
Is that right now we're in a protection? We are in what Trump gave us was a protectionist posture.
Right.
Protectionism sounds good. It feels good for a short time. It makes it seem like you're taking care of business and telling it like it is. But the truth is that with free economy, open economy, diversity in the society as an ideal,
yeah,
things percolate up in a different way than when everybody's freaking out to keep mine. And as in America, we've been living with this. We got to keep our fucking selves straight and safe from the rest of the world for so long.
Right.
We're just scared, you know? Whether it's the white fragility we spoke about in the racial stuff last time, or whether it's the economic stuff, we need a new narrative that says, dude, I didn't know we needed that many people, let alone the 500K we just let die from mismanaged COVID.
Right. Not to mention just the basic concept of people always are real quick on the right to say, if you don't like America, get out. And now we've got people coming to our country from South America because they don't like the country they were in. And they're like, no, fuck you. You can't come here. Yeah. So how does this model, if you don't like it, get out, work if you can't go live anywhere else? I mean, come on. It's pretty straightforward. If we're all supposed to live where we want, then we have to let people in, right? And then Donald Trump talks against chain migration as his in-laws are being chain migrated into the country and just snickers about it like it's no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, and it's important to realize that there isn't really a way to force people to have children. You can give incentives, but there's not really any serious, strong economic theory that says this is going to equal more children. You could give child tax cuts. You can do some things to try to sweeten the, make it better, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you guys probably know this much better than I would. Children cost a lot of money, right?
Yep.
You would agree with that?
It's your investment.
Yeah. You want to know a little secret, Zach? You know what's really good for making children? Power outages.
It's
a fact. It's a fact. Power outages create baby booms. But just FYI.
But no, it's true. And when I talk to my tax man and he's going through my stuff, he always jokes every year. He says, "Oh, and the child tax credit because the government wants to get people to have kids." I mean, he sort of under his breath. It's a joke that he kind of says every year. accountant humor. I'm sure it's rough, but that's what he says. And
I don't think anyone, by the way, has ever had a child for the tax credit. I mean, the tax credit is nothing.
But that's back to Zach's point, that we don't have an overall narrative of saying, did you all know we should probably be having more kids? Nobody's saying that right now. Have you heard that from a government official?
And there is a direct correlation between female empowerment and education and lower fertility rates, right?
Exactly.
When women start to have more choices besides be a mom, they tend to choose. I mean, some will obviously choose be a mom because some women want to be a mom, but many more women will say, well, actually, I'd like to be a kick-ass lawyer, or maybe I want to run for office, or maybe I want to own a Fortune 500 company, right? Like there's all these different career paths that when you give women rights, they take advantage of it, right? So you can see that it's a very direct correlation. So this is why we need immigration, because it's pretty much impossible to get us back to 2.1 without like some natural occurrence. There has to be some unforeseen, completely natural reason that Americans have their own baby boom, but we can't force that.
And there is, by the way, there is a model where empowered women do have children, and that's when their husbands don't mind giving up a shitty middle management career to stay home with the kids. There's a lot of men that cannot do that. There's a lot of men that cannot do that. Me, I was like, retire at 36? Fuck yes, I can do that. But a lot of guys can't. A lot of guys. Right. My wife had a med school peer whose husband was a construction worker. Nothing wrong with that, but you're talking blue collar labor job, and he and his mom could not handle the fact that the med student wife was like trying to balance med school and like house chores, and like they literally separated over that with the child involved. I mean, anyway, the point is, if we get rid of these ideas of masculinity that you have to earn more money than your wife, which is ridiculous. I mean, there's ways that women can be empowered and still have families. It's just maybe men every now and then have to take the secondary career. It's it's not rocket science, guys. Anyway, sorry I interrupted you, Zach. You're on a roll.
I mean, that was a really good point to be made, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great point to be made, Jeff, because what you're talking about is a different way of having to approach an economy that a lot of people have made, that your family's values, your family's systems values were important to make a economic change that the society does not teach.
Right.
And a lot of families in our generation have looked different and do look different in those roles. And yet we don't have a national narrative about that.
Right.
That's important. I think the national narrative is where my head is right now, saying, why aren't we telling that story so that because people need to know what's normal. And that's part of what MAGA has been, is saying, man, none of this is normal. And the guys just freak out.
Yeah. Well, my dad was enlightened enough. He was in the first round of the men's movement, not this incel crap, but the first round of men's movement, where he pulled me aside, and said, men die before women because they spend their whole life working and not taking care of themselves, not raising their children. They just work and work and work and work. And one day you turn around and, you have a few years of retirement and die, and that hit me hard, and I've been able to be home with my kids for the last 7 years. I mean, that's time you'll never get back, as other people know. So, you got to balance things. I don't fault anybody for working. I mean, I'm good job working, there's all kinds of models, but, it's actually funny because other guys will say they get shit from like other parents and everything else. And I guess it's because I'm 6 feet, or I don't know, 6 feet tall or something, because nobody says shit to me. Nobody says shit to me when I say stay-at-home dad.
That's not why.
People are like high-fiving me. People are like, I wish I want the job I want.
Dude, it's because you don't give a shit if they say something to you or not. You're like, really? Because I'm off, so eat it.
Yeah, it's true. They probably have said negative things to me. I just turn around and go, well, how was work today then? A 3-hour nap. Congratulations on that work thing. I hope that's working out for you.
Yeah, way to find your identity, dumbass. Sweet.
I'm sure your boss really values and appreciates you.
It'll reflect it in your paycheck.
Yeah, I'm sure. You don't want to get me started on that. I don't want people to be quitting their jobs tomorrow.
No,
I don't want to get on too much of a roll about getting off the rat race.
Again, The world is not the norms are not the norms, and that's part of what we're facing now. And I think we didn't get into a lot of the specifics of any Build Back Better stuff, but this is part of the conversation. There are new gauges on the dashboard in a Biden economy.
Yeah. And I'd like to point out at least 2 trolls were shut down with a simple question of explain yourself. Somebody came in here and said Biden needed to repent. I said, for what? No response. I don't remember what the other one was. Oh, it was the spammer. Yeah, he said something. I said, can you give me an example with facts? He just went on to the next topic. Anyway.
Yep.
We're just using logic, folks. I don't think anything we've said is loaded or based in fallacies. We have our opinions, but if you want to argue it, just try and present a logical point.
Zach, thank you for coming on and giving us some fresh air and some wind here tonight as we continued on. I appreciate you popping in. Any last thoughts or predictions as we kind of close up shop here tonight? And if not, no big deal. Don't put you on the spot. But if you've been waiting to drop something, man, here's a chance.
I think that I don't have a prediction right now. That's my
brilliant,
wise move.
Brilliant.
You know what? My prediction is going to be, Marty. Why don't you pull up that picture I sent you a little bit earlier?
Hold on, let me find it.
Interesting.
Put me on my computing skills here. Oh, look at this. All right, here we go.
Can't wait.
Dude, well done.
I think things are going to feel kind of like that.
Oh, look at that picture.
That's nice.
The ocean. Where's this at?
This is on the California coast, just south of San Francisco.
This was our continental sunset this evening. Wow.
I will suggest, there's atmospheric pictures are so hard. Was that a smartphone or an actual camera?
That was my phone.
Yeah, atmospheric pictures are always tough. First thing I buy for any of my single lens cameras is an IR filter. It's just a great way to protect your lens, and it helps break that haze down. But these modern phones are taking great pictures. That is a beautiful picture. Yeah, that is a beautiful picture. I'll take. I'll try and maybe there's sometime this week I can get a sunset picture of somewhere around Wichita. Maybe the sun setting picturesquely over Gander Mountain, the closed store downtown.
Oh, now it's on, Jeff.
Oh,
now the hobby is on.
Sunset, sunset overs.
Prediction is we're going to see some dark days. Oh, Princess Fridays are.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe something fun will happen with the weather.
We'll see. Hey, everybody! I'd like to say thank you for being part of this show. And
yes,
Jeff, did you have any finals tonight before we close up?
Not specifically. I did go get an oil change Friday, and the dealership mask compliance was crap. So that was disappointing. I just went outside, made some phone calls. I was like, I'm not standing in here with these people. Salespeople, customers. The customers waiting actually had masks on, but salespeople covering only their mouth. The service manager was walking around without a mask. It was just like, gosh.
Yeah.
And the only reason I didn't complain is they had nothing posted. Like if you're just going to be Dutch, we're just do what we want to do.
Thank you guys.
I'm not going to complain. It's when people do it hypocritically that it pisses me off. So they didn't have it posted and they weren't doing it. So I guess fuck it.
Boxcar, I want to say before we go, I think what will happen is we're going to roll through this. I think we've got 2 more shows on Periscope, and then we will go to Haps and see how it goes. We're also going to be on the YouTube channel. And then I'm also going to try to get this thing up in the next week on DTube, which is on the blockchain. It's similar to YouTube, but there's no filters to it, and we can maybe get on that and jump into the Web3 and just sort of move our butts over there and see if it works. We'll be around. We'll also be using Twitter Live, so you can connect with us at Heels_America as a way to connect to us. Also, Princess Fridays are. We've always looking for new guests. You have had some great comments tonight. If you'd like to connect with me at Heels_America and connect with us, we can find a way to maybe talk about whether or not you'd like to be on the show. Just an invite for you and for anybody else who's interested. Same way.
Yeah, Redneckonomics was maybe going to reach out, but I never got anything from her. I believe that she's our YouTube viewer.
Yeah, and there's
so
no
same
rush,
thing.
but
Reach out to Heels_America, and
yep.
I mean we're anyone who's interested. I mean, we're obviously looking for diversity of opinions and just general diversity, gender diversity, and
yep.
Yeah,
we're really trying to build a conversation as we've done tonight. Whether it's around a glass of bourbon or some coffee and pie or whatever you want to do, to just kind of discuss where we are. And we're going to disagree on some stuff, but we do it in a way that's respectful. And by doing that, we hope that we begin that healing process, because we don't all have to agree, but we do have to be patriots in the same direction. So thank you for being with us, everybody, tonight. And Zach, thanks again for coming in. Jeff, thanks for hanging out all night. And for everybody, be well.
Be well. Happy spring break, everybody.
Happy spring.